We're good.
Cool. Here goes the intro.
Hey, Juice, scooch in just a smidge.
Serial killing. What up, nerds? Welcome to the last episode of the year. My name is Bob. I'll be your host for this evening. Straight chilling's the name of the game. Talking horror is our fucking claim to fame or whatever. This is episode number 195, recorded on Sunday, December 23rd, 2018. Tonight we're going to be talking top 10 of 2018 year-ender Holla Holla. Before I get into it, let me introduce everyone else on the show tonight. First up, calling in from Santa Barbara, California, my boy Randy Gandy G. Landy.
So there's a fun game going on tonight. It's called Guess Which Two of Us Three Are Very Drunk. If you guess right, you get a pat on the fanny.
The answer is Randy and also Gandy. G. Landy, sober as a judge.
If only.
F only. Last but not least, calling in from my dining room table, my boy, Soul Juice Stains.
What up, bitch, your boy, Boo Stains, the OG.
Bow, bow, bow.
Woo! Sober as a judge.
Welcome to Saxonville.
Saxonville, baby, born and raised.
Jaguars won their game today in your honor.
Did they?
Yeah.
We were watching that game. I don't recall how it ended.
There was a pick six, and then the dude didn't miss a field goal, and then we won. And
Let's go!
And it doesn't matter anymore.
Let's go!
Best horror goddamn podcast on the planet. This is what we do.
We kind of talk about football.
You know about
shit,
tangents?
boy.
Did you guys hear about the tangents today?
Mm-hmm.
There are plenty of them.
It's my favorite team.
So, last show of the year, we're going to run down our favorite movies of the year. We're going to talk about some of the worst movies of the year. We're going to talk about some honorable mentions, should we have them. I think even if you're like even moderately paying attention to the state of horror in the year of 2018, it's very easy to say that it has been a banner year, right? I feel like there's a lot of good shit going on. Tons of good shit.
It's been a good year. We were mentioning this earlier. There's a lot of good shit. There's also a lot of dog shit, which we can do some honorable mentions.
My feeling is that it has been a good year, but
Yeah.
by the shit far outstrips the not shit by a wide margin.
Shit outstrips
Really?
the not shit?
Yeah.
There's more shit than good shit?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's what's good about horror isn't the amount of good things that we have necessarily this year, but it's the amount of opportunity that people have to make things.
Sure.
Okay.
So
I
there's a
still
lot of
think-
outlets now, but I still think that a
Well,
lot of what was produced wasn't great. Like a lot of it was like sort of fell in the middle for me, and to me,
Yeah.
like in a market so saturated, it's kind of tough to say that that's a win. But there
I
were a
think-
lot of great things for sure. I think that it's if you put them on a scale, it's not going to be even. The shit's going to outweigh. I think that's true most years though of any movie.
Probably.
Yeah.
I know that when I was making my top 10 list this year, though, I had more leftovers that like definitely could have been on the list if it were a different year. Like, there's more movies that I would still recommend that I'm not going to talk about tonight than in previous years. You know what I'm saying? They're not
All right.
necessarily like the greatest shit I've seen, but it's still I would definitely still recommend them.
It's true. I feel like this year I had to like really think about like at least like the bottom five, you know, like five to 10, where I was like, oh man, there's some ones that could really pop in there, and maybe I'll keep them for honorable mentions.
I have
as
some-
the top
I have about-
five.
I have about 5 dishonorable mentions. So
Yeah.
A dishonorable mention.
yeah,
Easy.
I have a lot of worsts, and I decided that I was going to have a dishonorable mentions category as well, which I encourage you to jump in on.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've got some there's some shit tier movies in this year, but
there's some very easily. Yeah, there's a lot of easily mocked movies this year, but I think that's true every year. It's just they're so fresh and so fun to pick on. It's great.
So fresh and so clean.
Yeah, I mean, even when I was crafting my top 10, I was trying to be careful, you know. I was like, oh, there's some that could creep in here, you know. That's okay.
Yeah.
Even like talking about movies and television shows, like in the horror genre, I still think there's plenty of good shit that was going on this year. But even beyond that, just like tangentially related things, like Fangoria came back this year, which was kind of a big deal. Joe Bob Briggs came back this year.
My boy Dick Bibbs.
The Dick Bibbs.
I loved that he covered Silent Night, Deadly Night. I love that.
I'm sorry. What?
Can you believe he skipped Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2, though, and went straight to 3?
Goddamn, that's the best one. 5-star from the old Bish, if you remember correctly.
The old Bish.
I'm sorry. What? Is this a bit? Do you not know? I know you were in the air.
This is a bit.
Okay, all right.
I know that
it's unclear because everything you say is slurred.
For his Christmas special. I understand.
Oh, somebody's carrying a torch. Not the kind that you carry when you're in love either. The kind that you carry when you're
Randy, how long did you last? I only made it through the first movie and a third before I passed out.
Dude, I watched the whole goddamn thing because I'm a goddamn professional in this monkey house of shit.
Randy, were you live tweeting the whole time?
I live tweeted the whole thing.
Damn, dude. Good for you.
I certainly followed that.
I watched all of them, and they have diminishing returns, let me tell you.
They do. Yeah, they do.
Poor Randy.
I gotta be honest. I love Phantasm 2, man. When he skipped it, sorry, I just burped in the microphone. He skipped fucking Phantasm 2, and I was watching the shit with Mikey, and I was like, the first one he'd seen before, he'd never seen 2, and I was talking it up so hard, and Joe Bob's like, yeah, we're skipping that piece of shit. I was like, what the fuck? It's such a good sequel.
You know why he did that, though? That's not... I mean, I don't know this, but I'm pretty sure he skipped to part 2 because of licensing issues and covered it with a hilarious troll about it being about a car.
Maybe, but it'd be strange to me that he could get the license for 1, 3, 4, and 5, but not 2 for some reason. You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
I don't know how that shit works exactly. But...
I don't either. So, but I don't know. I'm just going to... I think that's what happened. If not, then yeah, it's a dumb reason not to cover it, but I also... had a great time regardless. I would have rather have seen 2, but I feel like he feels that way too, but instead had to do something different by force. So
it's a possibility. I don't know.
But to your point,
treasure.
To your point, yeah, the whole thing, like horror has a bigger national presence this year than it has most years. I think that's a lot of that's credited with last year's success in horror.
For sure.
And then
Del Toro killing it.
Yeah, we found out this year that Del Toro and Jordan Peele were both nominated for Oscars and shit. That's great, and we got the reciprocal love of that from this year, and more people are willing to throw money at horror films than they were 2 years ago. So yeah, in that way, horror is definitely on the up and up.
Yeah, and there was that weird beat somewhere in the middle of the year. I think this was mainly clickbaity bullshit. But that dude, I forget his name, who wrote for Vanity Fair, that article about how the state of horror was totally in the shitter. I was like, maybe you don't like some of these movies, but you can't say that the state of the genre is in the shitter. You just can't.
No,
there's too much evidence against it.
I feel like it's making more money than it has in a long time, while at the same time maintaining a level of independence and creativity and originality in some of the movies that are coming out. To say that it's in the complete shitter is fucking bullshit. I'll fight a motherfucker.
Well, look, I mean, he can definitely say that. The problem is that there's somebody saying that literally every year. Somebody releases a think piece saying this year's terrible for horror movies every fucking year, and horror is dead. Horror dies more than God. There's
damn dog.
It happens every year. There's somebody
always in a constant
like
death, apparently.
it really feels like people still think of it as an easy to pick on genre, and that's easy to see why, because it's been picked on for years. But now it's getting some legitimate praise. It's fucking in the Oscars and shit, and like people are willing to accept that fucking horror movies are capable of just as high art as any other any other genre rather. And all that's happening right now, like in a way that hasn't before. So yeah, this is a good year for horror, even if there are some real stinkers on the list of movies that came out, which there are absolutely.
Yeah,
so and the
there's
thing is,
always
like,
gonna be.
horror's always been somewhat profitable. I mean, if they weren't, then they wouldn't be making 10,000 B movies for the drive-in in the 80s. Like, these extra movies that exist, that people forgot about. They forgot about because they were entrenched in such a huge amount of Costco level horror movie like recipient. It was purchased in bulk, and it always has been. Now it's profitable and prestigious, and people think that that's going to be its downfall, but it hasn't yet. We've only had like a year since it's been accepted into the Oscars as something worth talking about. I know that's not the only metric, but damn, I mean, give it a few years before you call it dead just because you didn't like a few movies.
The Oscars are some bullshit. I was excited to see like Jordan Peele and Del Toro kind of clean up last year, but still at the same time, they announced they were going to have like this popular movie category, which was going to include like comedy and genre film and stuff. And then they turned around like a few months later and were like, actually, no, we're not going to do that. And then they announced their nominees for this year's Oscars. And the only horror picture that was nominated, I think, was A Quiet Place for like sound design or score or something like that. And that was it, period. So like they totally just kind of took a steaming doo-doo right on the genre again. But also, fuck it. Movies are good. We like what we like. We're going to talk about what we like. Fuck those old white motherfuckers, waspy ass motherfuckers.
Dude, how are you going to nominate A Quiet Place for sound design and
half the movie's silence?
Dude, and well, not that, just fucking Suspiria is not going to get like a nod. Like that soundtrack is fucking brilliant. Are we not like...
Yeah. It's a great soundtrack. I don't like.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Hereditary deserves some love, I thought, for acting. Like, I don't know. There's definitely some overlooked stuff in the Oscars, but there always is something overlooked. Tons of things. I don't want to depend on the Oscars to tell us what's good, but it is a telling thing that horror was finally acknowledged last year, and I think that the money is flowing because of that. Whether or not I hold the Academy in esteem, the people who fund movies definitely do, and that's why I think we've gotten some great movies this year and some clunkers, and they've gotten just as much fucking love from the community as they ever have. But now there's like a broader appeal. There's a broader like push to get those movies in front of other people's eyeballs.
Yeah. You know who I really depend on to tell me what's good and what's not?
What's that?
It's that Straight Chilling Crew. So let's get into that top 10.
That's SCC.
Damn.
Do you like how I segued there?
I like your segue.
Yeah, that's how I do.
Just to let everybody know, like the normal segments that we do each show, we're canning all that shit this episode. We're purely talking about our top 10, our bottom however many, and whatever honorable mentions. So the way we're going to do it is we're going to start from 10 and work our way up to number 1. We're going to do we're all going to do our 10s, we're all going to do our 9s, et cetera, and then after we get through all of them, we'll run down our individual lists for you from 10 to 1, just real quick to recap what we talked about, and then we'll get into like the dog shit of the year and the honorable mentions and stuff. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's do this shit. Randy, would you like to kick us off, sir? What is your number 10 pick for 2018?
So number 10 was the hardest one for me to place. I got a few honorable mentions for sure. I'm going with A Quiet Place. Going with A Quiet Place for 10. So A Quiet Place was a movie that I did enjoy, and if you've listened back to our review of that episode, I feel like I come off harsher than I actually feel about the movie, because I definitely had some qualms with it, specifically with world building and fucking like specific details of it, which I try not to get entrenched in too much, but that movie is so much centered around that it was hard for me to ignore it. That said, it's still a fucking fun movie, man. Like there's something really satisfying about having what's considered to be a weakness, or not a weakness, but like what's considered to be um, a disability, basically being the thing that prevents death and destruction of your family. Like, I think that's a great theme, and they went like in a great direction by hiring somebody who was actually deaf to do that role, and she did a great job. And Krasinski was less Jim than he's ever been, so that's great. I don't know. I think it's a pretty good movie. And the thing is, like I said, this was a hard one to place because there were some other movies vying for this position. Do we want to go over honorable mentions or hold up?
Let's
save
all
it.
go through the
Okay.
10s.
All right. Well, yeah, it was hard for me to place this. There were a few others vying for that spot, but I'm going with A Quiet Place.
Okay. Good pick. Juice, what about you? What was your 10 spot?
I agree. Bottom of the list, 9 and 10 were tough to kind of place because there were a lot of movies floating around there that were, better than decent, that were good, that I enjoyed, that I would recommend. But I really had to kind of hone it in on the 9 and 10 spot specifically. And there were a lot of other movies kind of pushing for that spot. I ultimately went with Terrifier.
Okay.
Weird.
I went with Terrifier for number 10, and here's my reasoning behind Terrifier. We watched this movie not in Halloween. We watched it in the summertime.
Mm-hmm.
And of the movies that were kind of pushing for this spot, this number 10 spot, like barely kind of creeping in, I felt like my justification was in 2, 3, 4 years, I'll remember Terrifier. Like, I'll remember scenes, the character, specific kills from Terrifier, whereas some of the other movies that were kind of pushing for the spot, I feel like in maybe a couple years, I'll forget almost entirely the plot and the kills, and I'll be like, yes, I watched that movie, but I can't remember much about it. And so that's why kind of Terrifier sticks out to me. I feel like next Halloween, since it's kind of more of a Halloween-centered movie, I'll be more eager to watch this movie again.
Oh yeah,
because the killer is of the movies that were kind of pushing for the 10 and 9 spot. Terrifier is probably the one that most I kind of think about, or six in the back of my mind. I remember the killer. I remember the kills. Yeah, I mean, he's very distinct, and he did a great job. And even though the movie has its own flaws, there's not much story or any kind of character development, but I remember what they want me to remember. It sticks out into my mind, and it will for years. And I feel like next Halloween, I'll kind of be more eager to watch this movie than I would some other movies that were kind of pushing for the number 10 spot.
Yeah.
That's interesting to me. When you described a movie that is like this movie as a movie that's not forgettable, like you remember specific things about it, I almost would say the opposite. There are a few scenes that I think are memorable, though. The one in particular, and I guess spoiler alert. I don't know. We didn't. This whole episode.
It's kind of like I feel like we're gonna have at least light spoilers because we kind of got to talk about why these movies are on our list to some degree. We won't get into like everything.
Yeah.
But if you want to watch Terrifier, I'm about to spoil it. So here's 3 seconds of silence. 1. Okay. So there's a fucking Art the Clown uses a goddamn gun. I'll remember that. I remember that, and I'll remember his face because he is visually a fucking great looking slasher. So those 2 things I will remember, but the parts you like, the rest of it, I don't know if I'm struggling to remember specifics about it now. So
I'm always gonna remember that he takes a chainsaw and cuts a woman in half.
I forgot first. I forgot that.
It was a hacksaw, actually.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
So
you forgot part.
Details. However, I remember that a woman gets split from vagina to face, essentially, with some sort of tool, and you see that shit. You see it.
Art the Clown is like, slashers, they're dumb. They pretty much always have been, with the exception of a few that sort of exceed that. But I've said this a lot, they're kind of like meat and potato horror. I don't know where I'm coming from tonight. But Art the Clown is like the first slasher that I can remember in quite some time that's like a modern day character that has enough like charisma that you like. If a slasher franchise were to like come from him, I'd be down. I'd watch Art and 10 more movies. Like, you know, Jason is like
You're committing to 10.
Yeah, well, you know, whatever.
Well, no, I kind of agree with Bob to where, like, this movie, yeah, it lacked. I mean, it's my number 10 spot, but it lacked some things. But I feel like you could take that character, and if somebody wanted to do some like really interesting or like develop shit, and take that actor and take that character and do it, they could, because of this movie that was pretty slim, you know, as far as characters and development and story goes. What stood out was that character. He made it. He made this movie what it is. Like, of any value, it comes from that character. And so if anybody was actually going to put some thought and some love and some like actual development into another film, and they were able to kind of translate this like character into it, they would be successful, because of this movie, that character completely stood out, and he is what I will remember. I said, of the movies that kind of fought for this 10 spot, I will remember Art the Clown, and I will remember some of his kills that he did, and he is kind of the 10 spot, kind of the most that I think about in that area, I guess.
Well, I'm not going to rail on Terrifier too hard now, but yeah, like, to me, yeah, slashers are often, almost always, really dumb and silly, but to me, like, that, I don't know that would carry, that character's charisma is enough to carry me through 10 movies. So,
well, that Bob's pitching the 10. I'm not talking about pitching the 10. I could just easily see if somebody was like, you know what, damn, this character.
You can do any movie well. You could do
really
Killer Clowns well.
That character, because the character itself
is
actually really disturbing. Like, I'm specifically remembering, I was not able to watch this movie since we cast it. I tried to watch a lot of my top 10s again recently to kind of refresh my memory. I was not able to watch Terrifier again. I remember, like, when that dude cut up that chicken, was like wearing her breast and was like dancing around like naked. Like, there's some like really
I forgot about that
shit that this character in particular like pulls off and like is kind of dealing with and struggles with, and like that you associate with this character. I mean, this movie like really brought out some fucked up shit.
He did the whole severed head jack-o'-lantern before Halloween 2018. He did it.
Hey, there you go.
Two movies in the same year. Severed head.
I mean, that's been done before, but let's go.
I don't know. Terrifier takes my number 10 spot. I will remember it.
All right.
Y'all want to know what I got for number 10?
I want to know.
I'm going to tell you regardless.
Oh, I see it. Oh,
don't look at my list, dog.
I'm creeping.
Wow. If you're not watching the stream, Rob just whipped out his penis, and Justin is looking at it intently.
Why is it so small?
Prepare for the insertion.
Oh, God.
That's weird. Anyways, my 10 spot is The Strangers Pray at Night.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Why? Yeah. Why did this?
You guys are shocking
make your
me.
list. I'm curious.
Let me talk about it right quick.
Let me hear what you
So,
got.
like
If he
you
doesn't
guys,
center around the pool scene, then I don't agree.
That pool scene has got to make the movie, because that's the only thing I remember of any value.
Hold on. So yeah, I had many movies like we were talking a little bit throughout the day, or Justin and I were anyway. There's a lot of movies that I'm not even going to talk about tonight that I would still recommend people watch for sure. But so as far as my top 10 goes, I tried to pick the 10 movies that maybe weren't the best made movies, but they're the movies that when I think about and reflect on, I get kind of the most excited about, or they stick out the most in my mind. So this is very much like based on my enjoyment level of the movie. It's not like this is the best crafted 10 horror movies that were released in 2018, for sure. The Strangers Pray at Night had a lot of problems, for sure. It is incredibly different from the original movie. I love the original. It's like, you know, a quote modern day classic or whatever. This is definitely not that. The original Strangers has like that great subtlety to it where like there's scary shit going on in the background that's going to take you a few seconds to realize it's even happening. And it just like, it's very creepy, and it plays its scares very smart. This movie is just like it's all style. It really is. There's not a whole lot of substance going on
No
here.
substances at all.
No substance whatsoever.
No substance abuse, that's for sure.
God damn it. I've been drinking. There's like a few great set pieces in this movie that make it. Of course, the pool scene, in the like spoiler, I guess, towards the end of the movie here. There's that great like pristine send up where there's the flaming truck, and I just love those two scenes so intensely. And like when I think about this movie, those are what pop out. And also, I know you guys kind of didn't appreciate, or at least I think Justin, you didn't appreciate the 80s soundtrack. It's like a little hammy, but I really liked it actually. I thought it worked well in this movie, and like, you know, it's not really scary or suspenseful, but I just kind of enjoyed the cheese of it.
Yeah.
And I had fun watching it in the movie theater. I don't know, it's kind of like it was a good movie theater experience for me.
I feel you.
I got
it was
something
fun
from
enough to watch in the theater. I agree. I mean, it's to me it was kind of, for a sequel that comes out like what 10 plus years or something after the original. It felt cheap. It had some great scenes though. I will remember that pool scene. I will remember that truck scene. I will remember those movies in years to come. Unfortunately, The Strangers Pray at Night did not make my top 10 list.
Yeah, so far you guys have both picked movies that are on my dishonorable mentions list. So,
that's awesome. I love that.
That's pretty great.
Yeah, The Strangers, I don't remember that truck scene at all. I only remember the pool scene because that to me was like, oh, this is the scene that's supposed to sell me on the movie.
Yeah.
And it failed because I saw the strings pulling it. And I don't know, it seems like The Strangers, the original, which I personally really love.
Absolutely.
And you know, there's some people that don't, whatever, that's fine. But like for me, I love that movie, and it's not just that they bastardize that. It's almost like when you see there's a lot of horror movies that get sequels that are bad, but they usually don't take 10 fucking years to come out with a bad sequel. They don't usually have to take 18 years for a cult following to finally reach a head for them to pop that pimple and goo us all with dog shit. So, I don't love that movie. I do think that you're onto something when you say like it's a spectacle or whatever. Not, you didn't say that, but like that was your.
Yeah, but it is. Yeah.
That's kind of what I took from what you said about it being fun to watch. Yeah, I could see this movie being fun to watch with people. I could totally agree.
Yeah.
But in terms of like craftsmanship and like no, the acting in that movie's it's just real bad.
I kind of agree. It didn't make anywhere on my list. It didn't even like vie for a place. To be honest, it wasn't even pushing for a top 10. This movie was for me pretty forgettable. It was one of those. It was almost not quite a money grab, but pretty close.
That's what it felt like to me. It felt like a money grab based on a movie that didn't have quite enough clout to make that money.
That's the thing. That's kind of why I took it out of the money grab kind of realm, because it like the original movie is such a particular like blend. Like it's not like people were like screaming for a sequel. Like, oh god, you got to give us this. I don't know where it came from, to be honest.
I'm not trying to be honest.
Was nowhere close to even where the original hit.
Which is what I personally wanted from it, because like the subtlety was there, and if they just made the same movie again, I feel like it would have been boring, because like you would be specifically looking for creepy shit in the background.
Yeah.
Which is what made the original so successful, is because you weren't expecting that to happen. So
no,
if
that's
they
fair.
Did that again, it would blow.
That's fair.
But apparently you guys think this blew anyway, so that's fine. Randy, you're not
okay.
fine.
Let's just do.
Yeah, we're almost 30 minutes in, and we've only.
Yeah, let's speed it right on up. I'm gonna go with Revenge for my 9.
Nice.
So I enjoy a good like retribution fueled femme fatale, I guess, sort of film. I'm not always super on board, because it takes some real transgressions before you get to the point where you're like, okay, you can murder them with extreme prejudice.
Sure.
But this movie kind of does that, and I think it does it really well. I enjoy the setting. I don't usually like a desert setting, but the idea of like a palatial estate in the middle of nowhere, somehow that makes it a lot better for me.
I agree with you. I'm kind of with you on that. Like me and you, we've kind of brought this up in separate casts, but I'm not big on the desert aesthetic either. I think you brought it up in Tremors, but I agree. There's something about this movie that makes it tolerable. I completely agree.
Yeah, and it's like it also is like incredibly over the top and super not realistic with its like injuries and your ability to walk away from certain injuries.
Yeah.
Which it kind of at first doesn't quite seem like that kind of movie, but it goes into that. And at first I was pretty trepidatious with it, but by the end, I really love the climax of this movie where they're chasing each other down a bloody hallway in circles like goddamn cartoon characters.
Yeah.
I love what it
Dong hanging.
Dong swinging.
Yeah,
baby.
dong swinging. That's right. It's fucking. I don't know. I find that immensely enjoyable, and I also.
I don't even think I took away a negative. I don't even think I negative like a half star for that dong swinging.
No, you shouldn't, because that's a positive dong.
Yeah.
It is covered in blood, which is a little off-putting.
Oh,
So.
Jesus.
Well, I mean, what else? Like, I wasn't deciding whether or not to eat it, so.
Thank God.
Yeah, that was not on my.
Randy.
That doesn't look appetizing at all. Turn it off. No, I like this movie quite a bit. It just edged out A Quiet Place for me, because there were some issues, small issues I had with it. A lot of it having to do with realism and things like that, which I was less focused on in this movie because of where it ends up. Whereas A Quiet Place, whereas A Quiet Place hinges itself on reality. I think that was the deciding factor for me. Was the problems I had with reality in this movie didn't matter because in the end of the movie, it's a fucking Wile E. Coyote cartoon. So, yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Cool. Juice, 9 spot. What you got?
Nice. 9 spot. It's a movie that we didn't cover on the cast, so maybe some spoilers or whatever. But it's a movie I watched recently, and it is Cargo. I briefly mentioned it on What You've Been Watching.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Netflix horror film. It's got Dildo Baggins rocking. He's in the outback wilderness, and it's a zombie film. And there's a couple things, it kind of separates itself. It makes it distinct, like, what makes these zombies kind of special and stuff like that. And it does a good job of that. But what really, ultimately, I kind of had to put my like indifference aside as far as like the oversaturation of kind of zombie films, not just zombie films, but The Walking Dead, man. I mean, that's what really has done it. It's just like
too much.
God, shut the show down, man. I mean, goddamn. But, yeah, I mean, but the thing is, I can't punish this movie because it had a lot of heart. Ultimately, what came from this movie, it was really interesting to me because it approaches it from this a kind of racial perspective, I guess, because part of the aspect of it is it takes place in the Australian outback. And part of it is how the Australian, like Aboriginal, kind of like this minority of Australia kind of deals with it as well, as opposed to like just the standard old white man, like how he's dealing and like how they kind of clash and come together and how they kind of need each other. And ultimately, this movie, it's got a lot of heart behind it, and it brings some interesting ideas and aspects behind the idea of like a zombie infection and what it would mean. But ultimately, it's got a lot of heart, and it's got some scenes that I'll remember. It's got a pretty great cooter, to be honest. I mean, we didn't cover it, so we don't have a cooter of the week, but it's got a solid cooter in there. If you watch it, I mean, I think it'll be pretty easy to distinguish who kind of the cooter is of that movie. But Cargo was actually pretty solid. I was pretty pleased by the end of it. Once it all kind of came together, I was pleased with what I was given. Even with the oversaturation of zombie films that seemed to kind of like shine kind of through all that. Nice. So yeah, I would recommend it. We didn't cover it, but it was pretty solid, and it's going to take the number 9 spot on the list.
It's on Netflix. Right?
It's Netflix original. I don't know the details. Whether they buy it out or whatever they do, but it was.
Martin Freeman has been in so many fucking movies in the past couple of years and shows. He's fucking That is guy who's working his ass off all over the place.
Yeah.
And for somebody doing that much like high profile acting and showing up in so many unexpected places, I have not gotten tired of that dude. I love that
Yeah.
guy. Like he
Yeah.
does great in every role he's in, even if it's not the best role. He does like a great job with it. I'm happy to watch that movie. I just haven't gotten to it yet.
Yeah, and that was the thing. It really came up in the last maybe week and a half, 2 weeks. I was really just trying. I was like, it's coming up this episode. I feel like I need to do my due diligence because I know a lot of great horrors come up. And the thing is about Netflix, I feel like they kind of get shit on. You know, like the Academy, like they don't want to recognize them and shit because it wasn't in theaters for a certain amount of time. Fuck that. I mean, they're putting out some good content, and I try my best to try to get through as many of their original content horror films that I saw on there, and Cargo was one that stood out, and it was, I mean, it was pretty solid.
It's better than Terrifier.
Cool.
Well, yeah,
we all agree on that.
List,
yeah, by one spot, which I found out in goddamn fucking Netflix in the United States is so much better. Terrifier is on U.S. Netflix.
Yeah.
I don't have it in Korea.
I don't know what's more troubling, the fact that's true, or the fact that you have watched Netflix since being in America.
Dude, here's some bullshit. Let me drop some bullshit on you real quick. I know we're on a timeline. Let me drop some drunken bullshit on you.
We're not gonna stop.
I am in motherfucking Korea watching Netflix. They do not have Train to Busan on Netflix in Korea. I show up in motherfucking United States. They got Train to Busan. I think it's the same with The Wailing. I think The Wailing is available.
I watched it on Netflix.
In US Netflix. Did you fucking fall in love with it?
No.
God damn. Oh, we need to talk about the movie later. But it's not. It doesn't make any sense to me. The Wailing, one of the best fucking Korean films I've seen. Train to Busan, one of the best fucking Korean films I've seen. They're not available in Korea. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know. Rob, what's your number 10 pick?
Number
Or
9.
number 9 pick?
I'll talk about number 10. No, my number 9 spot. Here we go. It's a movie that we didn't talk about on the show. I know we talked about amongst ourselves. It's Puppet Master: The Littlest Reich.
Okay.
Hey, all right.
This movie right here. Speaking of Fangoria came back. They brought the magazine back. And in addition to that, they're producing movies. This is the first movie that they're producing. I think they're also getting into like podcasts and like books and shit. They're putting all kinds of content.
Fangoria, you can poach me from this podcast. Please save me.
No, Randy, you are mine.
Fuck.
You mine.
Fuck.
This fucking movie right here. This is like. I'm not like super familiar with the Puppet Master franchise. I've only seen the original and this movie. This movie right here is sort of like one for the gore hounds, I guess. It's got a lot of really great, memorable kills, and they're also all very silly because it's like these tiny puppets are killing people. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's easily got like my favorite kill of the year in it.
Please tell me which one.
This is a spoiler, for sure. So if you haven't seen this movie, maybe fast forward 15 seconds or whatever. There's a gentleman who's staying at a hotel. He's taking a pee into a toilet, and then a doll that's like kind of a helicopter flies in as he's taking a pee, cuts his head off. His head falls into the toilet. It then shows his dick pissing upon his own head.
Yeah.
Fucking ridiculous.
That
so
is.
you got that going on. You got stuff like that going on in this movie. It's very much like a horror comedy. It's got Barbara Crampton in it. It's got Udo Kier in it. So it's got some names. It's just sort of like a fun popcorn flick if you want to watch
Stuff
some
like
like
Tom Lennon. Tom Lennon.
Fucking Tom Lennon. Yeah, exactly. Reno 911 fame, you know.
New boot scooting.
New boot goofing.
Goofing. Anyway.
New boot goofing.
Terrible reference time. That was on my honorable mentions. I'm going to go ahead and talk about that for honorable mentions since you brought it up.
Yeah,
I love this. I love this shit. Like, we reviewed Puppet Master, which was one of like maybe 3 movies that really introduced me to actual horror movies, along with like Leprechaun and I don't know, a couple others. but it was one that I latched onto. I have literal childhood drawings of the puppets from Puppet Master hidden
Yeah.
away somewhere. I loved this franchise, and having seen it as an adult, I'm like, I was so bummed out. You can hear me getting like
Yeah.
progressively more morose over the Puppet Master episode. To see somebody take this franchise and sort of like wipe off the dust and clear off of all the debris and make something fun and fresh out of it, it warms my goddamn heart. And like, it's not like the best movie you'll ever see. None of them are, but like,
Yeah.
because of my like love for the series and just the intellectual property from the get-go, combined with this new like iteration, a new sort of like take on the whole thing, I love it. I was very happy that this movie happened, and like with a name like Puppet Master: The Littlest Reich, after the last several Puppet Master movies, that was not a great sign.
Yeah.
So
No.
when some people were saying that it was actually kind of good, I was like, all right, I guess I'll pay fucking 99 cents to watch this fuck. I've seen Retro Puppet Master. I've seen fucking like the bottom of the goddamn barrel.
Yeah.
And this movie like really resurrects something that I love. So it gets all the love in the world for me for that reason.
It's some fun shit.
I'm kind of with you on that, Randy. Like I remember the OG from like kind of my childhood. It was something that I kind of caught, and watching it as an adult, it was kind of disappointing because it was something that kind of stuck around with me. But unfortunately, this is not one that I was able to see this year. I was very intrigued by it when they showed like the cast that they were showing and the trailers that they were putting out. I was definitely interested. I just never got around to actually seeing it, and we didn't cover it on the cast, so I didn't get around to it. But I feel like it, you know, from what I've been hearing about it, it sounds like it's well deserved. So I'm glad to hear that as well.
Again, not the greatest movie in the world, but it is a fucking enjoyable movie for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Good.
Randy, what's your number 8 spot?
Number 8. So this is another movie that I feel like I came off pretty harsh on when we reviewed it, but I still liked pretty well, which is Upgrade. Upgrade. Let me upgrade you. So
Man, I gotta tell you, I'm loving this episode. Everything is blowing my mind.
Yeah,
Like nothing is predictable.
You don't
to
think
me.
the whiskey has anything?
I've known you motherfuckers for goddamn half my goddamn life
15
now,
years.
and nothing. It's surprising me. I love it. Let's go. Sorry, Randy.
So
number 8, Upgrade.
little juice intermission there.
Love it.
Upgrade. Yeah. So I like this movie, and if you listen to our recording, I feel like I took up the sword of Devil's Advocate because I had some problems with it. Now here's the issue. I haven't listened to that episode since we recorded it, like every episode, because I don't listen to our horse shit. But Upgrade,
You're the worst.
I'm going based on memory, which is pretty faulty at times, but I know that I feel like I took a pretty hard tack against this movie, and now I don't remember what my qualms were with it. So that is what to me convinced me, okay, yeah, this is top 10 worthy, because anything that was I found negative about this movie has fallen away.
Bigger than you.
So like the things I like, I think that my biggest problem, maybe if I'm remembering right, was that it was kind of heavy-handed. It's almost like an action-oriented Black Mirror episode.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was maybe a little too heavy in the terms of the action, and it didn't have like it compared unfavorably. God damn, that is a loud ice.
I'm
glad.
Rob,
so glad.
that's some loud ice, right?
I'm
Randy
so
said.
glad I get to say that. By the way.
Here's the thing I would say about Upgrade. I personally enjoyed Upgrade too. I saw it in the theater and was surprised by it. It didn't make my top 10 list, and some of the negatives I had against it was the acting. The main guy just wasn't that good, which is unfortunate because I felt like the overall story and kind of concepts behind it were pretty solid and kind of surprised me in some ways as I was watching the film. But that guy, he does this like fake kind of Southern accent. And it's not good. And the kind of personality that they put behind him, it's not relatable. It's not like even charming. It's just It was close. It was close to my top 10. It was kind of one of those movies that was vying for the top 10. But as far as you not remembering, that was one of the movies I kind of went back and watched again to try to like get my top 10 spot in lock. And I was just like, this guy, they did kind of lean into the action a little bit more than I would kind of like. And some of it was just kind of like brushed off as kind of like some sci-fi bullshit, a little bit like, oh, technology. You know, like it was a little loose. It played a little loose.
Well, Rick, to me, it's like I think like now that we're talking about it, you're spurring some like a remembrance for me. Like I remember feeling like this movie was written by somebody much older than the character, but who saw himself in the character, who was very anachronistic and was only interested in, in non-electric cars, non-self-guiding cars and things like that. And I thought that was a little heavy-handed, and maybe that's what tainted my whole view of the movie, but because like that's what you start with. That's your starting point. And I was already like, okay, like but technology happens, so you got to acknowledge it. But I like the Black Mirror aspects of this where like technology can like the fear of technology as it progresses is natural, and this is one of the like many things that you can look to that is less and less science fiction and more science reality in some capacity. So like that to me is like really engaging, and the action taken on its own merit is fun, but those two things sort of mixed in a weird way for me, so that's what really drew me back with it. But I like the lead actor. I thought it was Tom Hardy until we were recording. I remember that much. But once I realized it was the guy from The Invitation, I actually was like pretty blown away, because that shows me some range for that guy. Like I feel like his characters are so polar opposite. Like maybe the similarity being that they have like a sense of righteousness, but in a situation. But aside from that, like I love that guy, and like The Invitation is one of my favorite horror movies in recent memory in the last 5 years for sure. So like it's that infused a lot of love from this movie into me once I found that out. So I'm gonna say that Upgrade is my number 8, and I'm not gonna regret it. That's my vow.
Cool.
You shouldn't.
I always regret all of my rants on this show.
So, Ju, what's your number 8 spot?
Here we go. Are you ready?
Oh, I know what it is.
Halloween 2018.
I didn't listen to your screed on it, but I know that you had drunken screed that we posted on Patreon about Halloween. Yes.
I got a little bit of praise for that, to where we advertised it as a drunken kind of rant, following up some of my points, and somebody said like I handled it pretty well.
You were drunk, but I guess you did not sound drunk.
Okay.
That's the praise you're referring to.
Well, I feel like my points are
the same praise.
This is a bonus episode that Justin recorded for Patreons. People who support us on Patreon, by the way. That's why it's not in our normal feed. If you support us on Patreon, you can hear it. And some other stuff. Justin's going to be recording some other random drunken rants that you can hear if you support us on Patreon.
Absolutely. But I did, again, now I tried to say before that when I was covering my top 10 list, if I hadn't watched it within like the past 2 months, I tried to rewatch it again. I rewatched Halloween 2018. I can't even remember. I think I've seen this movie at least 3, maybe 4 times now.
Wow.
At least 3, maybe 4 times now. And here's the thing about this movie, and I've covered it in length, and so I won't go too much into it and just get into this big spiel, but watching it for a 3rd, maybe 4th time this year, it came out in early October.
That's at least once a month.
Yeah. Every time the last time I guess that I saw it, everything that I said in our original review of it just like solidified. Nothing like changed. So and some of it's personal, and I recognize that. Like some of the humor just doesn't land for me. But what I recognize as good in this movie is kind of a tribute to the original Halloween. So I thought kind of the middle section was my favorite. And that also kind of had the humor that kind of landed with me with the babysitter action and everything like that. But even in that, kind of giving it that kind of quality, I feel like, okay, the best part to me was parts that really were just like, it was so obvious that they were paying tribute to the original Halloween.
Sure.
Like, we're paying tribute to this. And I was like, okay, they did a good job in that. Whereas the first third and the last third really fell flat. There were some aspects that were decent, that were good. I liked the soundtrack. I thought the soundtrack was really good. I thought some shots were really good. But ultimately, I felt like the character development was really flat. The story outside of the paying homage to the original Halloween was really flat. I didn't find it compelling at all. Hardly. I felt it was very plain and everything. And so ultimately, what I have to say about this movie is, I think I originally given it 2.5 in our review, and I feel like that stands. I feel like a 2.5 is actually like almost ingrained now in my mind. It's like it's decent. It's decent in my movie. And I think one of the things about the whole, like, people think I hate this movie, it's just like the praise that it gets. I don't think it's justified at all. I think it's so Hollywood bougie, like popcorn horror, like almost compared to The Nun.
Whoa.
Well, but like in the whole, like, people go for spectacle kind of thing. Honestly, I honestly do, and I did it in the bonus Patreon episode. I feel like there's two sects. The reason this movie made so much money, there's two sects. There's these people who go to the movies once or twice a year to see a horror movie. They say they're horror fans, but really, they go for that kind of popcorn horror. They saw this movie and were pleased by it. And then the people who say, like, oh, it's not Halloween 3, it's not Halloween 4, like, oh, thank God. And they're just like grateful that they got this Halloween sequel that's just not complete dog shit like that what we've been getting.
I like Halloween 3 and 4 and 2.
So do I.
But I like Halloween 2018. It's fucking a lot better than The Nun, by the way, because...
Well, okay, I The Nun is obviously not even on my list. It's probably going to make the bottom 3.
I think if as far as Halloween was going...
When I say, like, popcorn horror, there's this type of aesthetic that directors, like, kind of are going for now when they say, like, and they released it right before Halloween, people are going to be going to the theaters around this time of year, and they're going to be expecting this kind of thing. And I feel like those people who say, I'm a horror fan, but they go to the theater once or twice a year, they were pleased with this film. They went in 3 weeks before Halloween, and it gave them that jolt that they loved.
I was pleased with this film.
Hang on. I'm not saying that
this is a no true Scotsman argument, by the way.
I'm just saying that the reason this movie was so successful and made so much money is it kind of like hit the perfect storm. It's like they did a great job with marketing and everything. Mm-hmm. From the film is concerned, the middle third is good. The middle third. But at the same time, I have to recognize that a lot of that's not original. They were literally paying homage to the original Halloween movie, and everything that they tried to make original, like, everything else wasn't that great to me. So I'm giving it the number 8 spot, Halloween 2018.
That's fine. I'll reserve my comments. I'll be talking about this a little bit later.
That's fair.
Yeah, it'll come up again, so I'll save them. My number 8 spot is another movie that we didn't talk about on the show. I actually just watched this for the first time this week. It's a movie I've been hearing about for a little while. It's a movie called Assassination Nation.
Oh, yeah.
I've never heard of it.
I kind of wanted to see that, actually.
I won't spoil it. I'll just kind of talk about it at a quote high level. So this movie is
drinking so much. I say Randy poured.
Yeah, we're getting poured up.
I'm not gonna teetotal while you guys are completely blasted.
Thank you, sir. This movie right here is like the first half. Honestly, is not a horror movie. So I watched it and I was kind of like debating whether or not I should talk about it on the show at all. And I came to the conclusion that absolutely yes, I should, because if The Purge is considered a horror movie, this is a fucking horror movie.
Okay.
For sure. The first half of this movie is sort of like you're following these teenage friends in high school. They're all girls. They're very much like of the millennial mindset. They're very ingrained in like social media and what have you. And basically, the whole plot of this movie is like what would happen. This all takes place in the city of Salem, by the way. Well, so the plot is what would happen if everybody's like social media, like all the stuff that maybe you kind of try to keep to yourself, like whatever text messages or like
search
images or search it. Yeah, all that shit that would normally be private is no longer private.
South Park did it.
Yeah.
So Simpsons already did it, bro.
So anyway, shit goes fucking haywire in the city of Salem, and the second half is essentially, it's very Purge-esque. You've got all these people taken to the streets wearing masks, and they got flaming torches. And they're hunting people out specifically that, had various things leaked about them that, maybe they were kind of fucked up or maybe they were like totally fucking innocent, and people are spinning them in a way to make them look fucked up when they're really not. And it's like, it comments a lot on like the dangers of social media. It comments a lot on like the pressures that like teenage people are feeling from social media and like how they're viewed, specifically women. Like this is very much a female heavy cast, and it sort of like puts you in the shoes of a teenage girl, which obviously I don't know shit about.
Rob,
but it's
time for you to stop lying to yourself and everyone else.
It's really cool to see a movie through those eyes, though. I like really kind of like expanded my mind in a way. I'm not saying this movie's gonna like change your fucking life, but it did. It kind of like it put some stuff into perspective. Like I don't really think much about like how do teenage girls feel? I don't have any kids or whatever. I've got some nieces, but they're very little.
I find that very hard to believe.
This analysis is gold.
No. But this movie, it just like it sort of it did. I don't know. It brought some stuff to the front of my mind that has never really been there before for one reason or another, and I really appreciate it for that. And also, it's got some like crazy, gruesome scenes in the second half. Like Joel McHale is one twisted motherfucker in this movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Fuck. So that sells me hard. I'm ready to watch this thing now.
So it's just keep in mind like the first half really is not a horror movie. It gets pretty gruesome and purge-like towards the end. If that sounds interesting to you, then for sure watch it. I got a pretty good kick out of it, and I definitely recommend it. That's my number 8 pick. For sure.
I'll tell you, man, there's a lot this year, like at least looking at my list, there's a lot of there's two trends I'm seeing. One, there's a trend towards Black Mirror-esque, like fear of technology type movies. Mm-hmm. And then there's a trend towards female heavy casts.
That's true.
Which I don't know if that's a trend in Hollywood in general. Like, I think it is a little bit of a trend in Hollywood in general to make female leads more prominent, or just making more movies that pass the Bechdel test. But I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, by the way. But
I don't know.
But either way, like it's well deserved. Like on my top 10 list, like none of the movies that sort of hit those two check marks are like, I don't know, like they're all very well deserving of being listed in any top 10, I think. So, yeah. I mean,
all right.
Way to go, sci-fi horror / women in horror.
Hell yeah. Randy, what's your number 7 spot, sir?
In that exact vein, my number 7 spot is a movie we did not cover, but we have spoken about, called Cam.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You guys both seen this?
Mm-hmm.
Not all the way through. I've seen parts. I started watching it, but I didn't make it all the way through, unfortunately.
All right. Well, the ending is kind of a big pivot point for me in terms of like that's kind of a big talking point for me. So cover your ears if you want. But
I might.
Okay. All right. He's gonna go take a piss. He just
big piss.
Let's not fucking kid ourselves. He's gonna take a piss, and I'm gonna talk about Cam. So the ending of this movie is the only qualm I really have with it, and it's really more of like almost a selfish qualm. I really want to know what the technology is that is actually being faced off against here. I really want to know more about. So here's what happens in the end of this movie. There's a cam girl, as they're called, sex worker who like talks to people on cams and like does shows and then does private shows and then has men buy her gifts and things like that, which is becoming more and more of a legitimate business in the eyes of people socially, which is great. But at a certain point in this movie, our lead character, whose name I've forgotten, it's been a couple weeks, but her rating, which is apparently very important on this website, starts to tank because people are like plotting against her. And then, more concerningly, somebody seems to take her place. Like somebody who looks exactly like her and acts and speaks exactly like her is in real time mimicking her on the fucking cam. And then it turns out, yeah, it's a doppelganger, and the whole movie you're trying to figure out what it is, and by the end of the movie, you don't really get an answer as to what it is, except that it is some sort of computer algorithmic program, which is beyond the understanding, certainly of me, but of most humans, I would imagine, and is like the sci-fi idea of being able to be replicated by technology. Like it's the same thing as like there's this fear of in the future people being able to manipulate an image of any public figure doing anything they want using CGI or using voice mimicry through technology, and almost have like at least have enough of a similarity to where the common ear cannot tell the difference. So like, I mean, I don't know if we're there yet. It doesn't seem like it because nobody's used it politically yet. But in like 5 years or something, I wouldn't be surprised if we had like a big news story about Bernie Sanders like burning down witches in Salem or some shit and laughing and shitting on their graves or something because they're able to fake it through audio and visual mimicry. And that's what this movie deals with. Yeah, that's what this movie deals with. And the ending leaves that like curiosity and fear somewhat unresolved. I understand why though, because it's speculative. You don't really know what that technology is. So how can you really comment on it? The end result is what you're dealing with. So that's why I sort of give it a pass on that. And in terms of everything else about this movie, it's well acted. It's fucking enlightening to the lives of these people that do this cam girl like sort of lifestyle and like how they're treated by society and how they're treated by their fans and how it's pretty isolating in a lot of ways. Like, I don't know. I think it's fucking great. And to me, I like character studies in movies. I like movies that focus on one person and sort of like granularly details like what their day-to-day is. So for me, this movie kind of hits a lot of real positive points in that regard. And so, yeah, it's my number 7. I guess I'll leave it there.
Oh, nice pick. Juice, what's your 7 spot?
I'm going to hit that number 7 with a pick Randy has already mentioned so far. I'm going with Revenge at number 7.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. Revenge. And it is a little surprising to me. I know it's like dumb to say. I understand. But like the whole like rape, revenge, like the rape scenes and things like that, like it just really bothers me.
You're
like
so dumb.
I mean, just I know like we've said
close
it before,
to the bone,
like,
huh?
I think somebody mentioned like nobody likes the rape scenes, but like I don't know, there's something about like
I feel you. It sucks to watch.
It's something I don't want to watch. Yeah. But with this film, it as far as rape revenge goes, it handled it maybe as well as you can.
It doesn't linger on the
end. It doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't.
It wasn't. It was palatable for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They really don't show it.
And not only that, but kind of like Randy had mentioned before, the whole desert setting and everything like that, the aesthetic of it and just the look and shooting there doesn't particularly appeal to me either. But this film was actually like really well done.
Yeah.
I felt like it did justice to the characters, to the genre, to the set. Like, I don't know. I just felt like it handled everything as well as you could imagine.
Female director.
Yeah, I mean, like it took all of these different pieces that I'm not really about, like the rape revenge kind of storyline and scenes, and the kind of like the desert setting, and all these different things, and it made a film that I found compelling, that I found enjoyable, that I would watch again, that I did watch again, actually, honestly. I talked about watching movies again. I did watch this movie again, and I felt like I enjoyed it more the second time overall. It was It's kind of cool. It's kind of badass. That chick like fucking brands herself with this crazy beard. Like it's kind of badass, honestly. She fucking kills those cooters real good. So we did a cast where we were like trying to do a cooter of the week, and we kind of had a hard time picking between all the guys. They were all just real shitbags. There's three cooter French bitch asses and this badass chick essentially who just kind of rises to the top, you know. She,
I am the cream.
she kicks ass, and the way that she does kick ass and the way that this film is portrayed, it's kind of beautiful, honestly. Like, I don't like those at all, but they use these kind of like blues and reds. I don't know. They use these colors that are really compelling to me, and the story was intriguing, and I felt kind of justified and attached to that main kind of character, and I liked kind of where her journey ended up. So Revenge takes my number 7 spot.
Cool.
Yeah.
My number 7 is gonna go to Upgrade.
Let me upgrade you.
Upgrade. We're gonna talk about this a little bit. Leigh Whannell. This is an original joint from him. Wrote and directed it. Very much like science fiction, action, horror.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun with it. It's I really enjoyed the camera work. They had a lot of like crazy camera movements. It seemed like what's his face, the main actor, the camera was like attached to his body in certain scenes. So you stayed with him as he moved like very quickly around as he's kicking ass and taking names. I don't know. It was a fun movie. Very much a popcorn movie. I don't know. That's pretty much it. I mean, we already talked about it a little bit. Upgrade. It's fun. Leigh Whannell. Good job. Keep making movies.
Yeah, I'm glad. It was a movie that I watched that I was surprised by, and it didn't make my top 10. It would have been the 10th spot. Like, it was fighting for that Terrifier spot, and I was like, hey, I might forget Upgrade, and like, technology based and stuff like that, but Terrifier can actually say, I am pleased to see that other people seem to enjoy it, even maybe more than I did, because when I left the theater, I was like, yeah, okay. I was like pleasantly surprised by that movie. Yeah, it had its flaws. It wasn't a perfect film, but when I left, I was pleased with what I saw, and it made my top 10.
I remember probably the number one thing I remember from this movie actually is the opening credits, where it's all like the robot voice speaking them to you as you've got like the waveform on the screen, kind of showing a visual representation of his voice. That was like I've never seen that shit before, and as soon as it started with that, I was like, holy shit. Like, it just, that simple little thing, that little choice that somebody made, it kind of rocked my socks clean off.
Really, to me, if this movie had been better acted, or maybe even better, like, written dialogue-wise, it really could have elevated the movie, like, to a very high level. And it's like, some of the choices that they made with the main character and the dialogue and the acting was just, like, really questionable to me.
I think probably to that end, like, the biggest thing that you can point to, I'm just now like realizing this. I think maybe the biggest issue I have with that movie is that it plays with Black Mirror ideals, but dabbles too hard in Mad Max territory, where like the future is like really ostentatious and bizarre, and like you can't understand it, which is probably more true than not. But in order for you to connect as a viewer, there has to be relatable enough. And there's some things in that movie which, like, some of the like villains, some of the like thugs that he beats up and shit are a little bit fucking like Mad Maxy, a little cartoony by comparison. So it's kind of hard to take it as seriously as you want to. So maybe that's like the real crux of the issue I have with that movie. But otherwise, I like.
It's totally a B movie, but it's clean. It just looks clean. So it's kind of like, maybe you're not totally sure how to take it,
They have tracking shots and shit.
And I was surprised. I mean, it's looking back now, it's not like oh my god, what an amazing kind of twist or whatever. But at the time, I was like, oh shit, yeah, okay. Like, I was down with it. I was following the ride that they kind of laid out for me and enjoying it.
Down with the sickness.
Yeah,
Wow.
Oh Lord, let's move on to number 6.
Randy, what's your number 6 spot?
My number 6 is actually another female-led film, and well, not so much one that's sci-fi, but well, I guess a little bit, and it depends on how you look at it. It's a movie called Unsane. It's another movie we have not recorded.
Nice.
Have you seen it, Bob?
I like it. Yeah, good pick.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Juice, have you seen it?
I have not.
Okay, so Unsane is a movie that I like for a number of reasons. First of all, it surprised me. I did not expect to like it, which is completely on me. And I'm not gonna pretend like that's an objective point that it's earned, but it earned it. So that's earned for me. Second is technical. The idea that this movie was a personal sort of like attempt by Steven Soderbergh, whether like capitalistically initiated or not, to film an entire movie on the iPhone. I think that's an interesting challenge to make for yourself as a very well established fucking Hollywood director, to make a movie on what's basically a toy for most people. And third, and probably most importantly, is the story. Like, this movie does a lot of shit that is very expected for a while, and then it goes off in a direction that I did not expect. And I think that's, like, anytime a movie is able to sort of like pull the rug out from under me, like at this point in the game, this isn't 1998 when this isn't pre-Shyamalan.
Randy's wise to your games.
It's a post-Shyamalan world. We're all looking for we're all trying to be Abed and Nadir and seeing where this is all leading. And then usually we can see the obvious conclusions, the Occam's razor of what's happening. But a certain storyteller can see those things too and then subvert it. This movie subverts expectations for me, and that is more than enough for me to laud it. The acting is interesting and great, and the technical prowess is really interesting and great and unique. It's just a unique movie in a lot of ways. The story doesn't seem unique at first, which I thought was going to leave it to be forgettable, but it turns out not to be, because it subverts those expectations in such a way that's not like very visually stunning, which is fine because it's being recorded on fucking iPhones. But like, in terms of subverting like the typical story that you would expect from this scenario of a woman, I don't know if I covered it, but it's about a woman who winds up being committed to a mental hospital by frustrating misunderstandings and deviousness on the part of the hospital itself. It's sort of like, yeah, isn't it? Like, it's like this sort of like red. It's like, first of all, it touches on like red tape, like how red tape might end up capturing you. And like, it's like, oh, you didn't sign this check the right way, you get to go to jail now, and now you're in jail for 100 years because you can't afford to pay for bail, and that sort of shit. It's like this entrapment thing, which is a very real fear in this country, not so much for white dudes, but I don't know, man. I think that it's the fact that it surprised me more than anything else is what leads me to give it this spot. But it really surprised me, and it really gave me something to chew on, and it really impressed me with what it was able to accomplish with the technology given. So it's number 6 for me.
Nice. Juice, number 6. What you got?
Number 6. I'm going Overlord. Nice. We covered it not too long ago. New movie. I like this movie, especially the first half was really impressive. We kind of gushed over that opening scene in our when we reviewed the movie. I always said like the aesthetic and just kind of the idea of the World War II as a movie point kind of draws me in for the most part in most movies. And that opening scene is so good in this movie. It's so good. And while some of the other scenes are kind of lackluster by the end, I feel like for the most part, they kind of live up to the expectations they kind of set up for this movie. I probably would have liked for it to end a little bit stronger.
That's my problem with it as well.
Yeah. But overall, I mean, it's got some really impressive stuff. And I like also, too, at the same time, I'm like, I would have liked a little bit more from it. And I don't shy away from that. I still agree with that kind of idea, but thinking about it, it kind of subverted expectations a little bit as well. The whole idea of like, oh, this has to be a movie where they're constantly being chased by zombies or something like that. Like it was sparse, but it was impactful when
I don't know if it was sparse, but I know what you're saying. Like it wasn't a zombie film, which is what people went into it thinking they were going to get, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of it was itself with kind of no apologies, and it held up pretty well in that. Outside of even like the zombie realm, it more like the kind of fear and the horror and the tension came from like kind of the claustrophobicness of like where they were in this like basement kind of laboratory and stuff like that, and just the Nazis in general and experiments and stuff like that. It took the whole like Frankenstein's monsters or whatever that bullshit movie was, and it made it like a
Frankenstein.
Legit.
Wait, what?
Frankenstein's Army.
Frankenstein's Army.
Oh, okay. I was very confused. I thought you meant Frankenstein. I was like, I don't know if it has anything.
Frankenstein's Army. It was like essentially the same premise, like Nazis experiment and shit. But this movie made it legit, and like just in that opening scene alone, and the characters that they developed, I felt like the first half of this movie was so solid. And really, I just have some qualms with it, like how they chose to end it. And I felt like it was maybe like I don't know, or kind of do this kind of thing. And it wasn't the worst. It just certainly wasn't up to the potential that it could have been. So ultimately, Overlord is going to take the number 6 spot for me, and it's certainly positive. But I see the potential. I see what it could have been, and I'm a little disappointed in ultimately what I got, but still overall like a very pleasing and enjoyable film.
That was an honorable mention for me as well, and I think I understand what you're saying. Like the idea of setting it in World War II, it's all like. It's a double-edged sword for me personally, because on one side I think, well, that's easy, but the reason I think it's easy is because the stakes are very clear. Like there's no war that Americans have to look to in our history that is as just as the liberation of a bunch of people being genocided. So like in our collective minds, it's like it's the obvious go-to when you want to say America is good and it's the force of good. So the delineation between good and evil is very clear on the outset, and the movie gets to play with the strands of that and how they interweave and how they interact. That's why World War II movies on a lot of levels are good, and how they can be complex or not so complex. That's why there's a Frankenstein's Army movie, because it's so obvious that Nazis are evil that you can make them cartoons and nobody bats an eye, and like you can make them fucking zombies and shit. But that's almost the reason that I reject it a little bit, because like for example, we watched Jacob's Ladder recently, and that was set in Vietnam, and you had sort of like not so much of a reaction to that. You didn't like watching movies in that, and I think that's because it's such a complex war that even having an opinion about what that war was about, even answering that question, if you can't answer that question, your setting is already in question. So you start in a not so solid situation narratively. But like in terms of Overlord, I agree with you though. The ending is sort of what kills it for me too, because it almost blows up so much throughout the course of the film that it has nowhere to go. So that's my only real qualm with that movie, besides sort of like personal preference, is that it sort of just doesn't have a lot of room to grow once they made this most bombastic shot in horror cinema this year.
Seems like they blew their load on the first half, and
which
so like, oh, we gotta wrap it up.
Again, like that's both a good and a bad thing. Like it's good because we're talking about it now, and we both agree that it's great, but then it leaves them very few options in terms of the ending.
Sure.
Y'all want to know what my number 6 pick is?
Nope.
Yeah, let's go to Randy's number 5.
You're the worst.
I know.
You're the worst.
Bob, hey, move that number 6.
It's Overlord.
Overlord. Hey.
Hey.
Look at us. Look at us agreeing on something.
Oh.
The first scene of the movie. It's fucking so good.
It's so good. It's so good. It's so good.
I love that shit.
What a scene.
Zombie shit, good acting. It's like a legit action war movie. It's fun. We talked about it. Whatever. It's fun. watch it, put your eyeballs on it.
Yeah, I mean, even it's one of those movies where I feel like maybe in a couple years I might forget like some major details of it.
Yeah.
Like I don't shy away from that idea. That like some of it was like, even now I'm kind of like, what were they doing there and what was going on? But there's enough distinct scenes that first scene is so incredible. Yeah. It really is.
Even like, so he's on the plane taking fire, falling from the plane, which is probably the coolest shot, period.
It really is.
And then even to the point where he lands, he regroups with his friends. It's got like that crazy silhouetted shot with paratroopers hanging from the trees.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're building the characters as they're walking through the forest. One of them steps on landmine and gets blown up. Like that whole, until they
that was
get
fucking
to the
Grey
house.
Worm.
Yeah.
Fucking Grey Worm. That shit's like, it's so fucking good, man.
It really is.
And it does not maintain that intensity throughout the whole movie, for sure. If it did, it'd probably be my fucking number one pick of the year.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a
solid... It kind of petered. It's like siphoned off.
Yeah.
Like, started off real strong and then just kind of funneled out. But
I agree.
But not so much that it's unwatchable or anything.
No,
like that.
absolutely not.
Not at all.
Hit two of our number 6 spots, so
it's very good.
Whew, Randy.
So
what you got?
Bad Robot, still making good shit. Trust him. Randy, number 5 spot.
So this is number 5 for me. It's a little film that we will not agree on. It's called Halloween 2018.
Let's get it.
So Halloween for me, like we've already talked about it a lot. Some of the qualms that you have with it, I feel like they're both fair and unfair. And let me explain what I mean by that. Some of your qualms sort of seem to stem from this idea of what the general audience will think of it and what certain people will think of it when they go in to watch it. And I don't think we take that consideration with every movie. So I think it's unfair in that regard, but it's also true. And it's also, and more than that, it's also based on a real reaction that you're having. So in that regard, I respect it, and that's fine. But like for me personally, like I'm not interested in what Joe Moviegoer wants to say about this movie any more than I am about Cam or Upgrade or Revenge. I like this movie, and I think that character development is maybe a little lacking to your point, but not as much as I think that you think, or at least not for me. Like I think it was stronger than you're giving it credit for personally, and a lot
aspects. What characters did you felt were really strong in this film?
What I feel, it's not so much the characters individually, it's the characters as a family dynamic, which is the core of this movie for me. Like the Strode family, for lack of a better term, that whole dynamic of rejection and complacency and desire to be with each other on some, like for each of the characters, I think that's really interesting, and that's about the only way you could go while also still involving Laurie Strode. Like I don't know how else you would involve her in a way that's distinctive from Halloween H2O and her just being sort of like.
You don't think that they could like completely cut the granddaughter who served no purpose in this movie whatsoever and just focus on the daughter?
She did serve a purpose. Her purpose was her purpose was her purpose was to
in what way?
Because the mom needed that stake. She needed her granddaughter to be invested in her grandmother, to be conflicted about their relationship enough to have that sort of relationship blossom at the end. I think that it works for me, and it's not like the greatest on-screen dynamic of all time, but it's something that I feel like it works well enough for me, especially in the context of a Halloween sequel. And like, granted, I agree with what you say that like, if you judge this movie purely as a movie on its own, it doesn't stand out as well as fucking Get Out or something like that, which is why it's my number 5 and not my number 1. But this is a fucking horror sequel in a series that is plagued by horror sequels that are not so good, even if I like them. This movie actually tries. This movie tries to be quality, and more than that, it succeeds in a lot of ways. I think that the first half has some flaws maybe, but isn't so bad as you say. I think that like the podcasts are a little annoying, but every slasher movie you will ever see has an annoying character that gets what they have coming to them. Like that's part and parcel to the territory.
What about that opening though?
Which opening? With them in the
The
mat?
opening where they shake the mask at him and he's in
I
the
gotta
thing.
be honest. I like this movie more than probably both of you. I got problems with that intro. I do.
That intro's rough.
It's a little.
I don't know.
But
To me, like it was a little on the nose, maybe, but aside from that, it didn't bother me. It didn't leave me
Yeah.
bothered. Let's just put it that way.
I thought it was terrible.
And then like the center part, like the part you said that you like the homages better than anything else. That's what a sequel is that
Yeah.
it's a new story with homages to the original, or with usually an attempt to re-encapsulate the feel of the original in some way. So if you like those parts, it's not so much maybe that you dislike this movie as much as you think, or as much as you
Yeah.
seem to be claiming, or much as it seems like, but
Uh-huh.
maybe it's more that you love the original so much, you hold it in such esteem that watching this movie sort of like do another variation on it isn't
Yeah.
hitting you so well, which is completely understandable. I've never seen a horror sequel, a slasher sequel, that trumps the original unless it was goofier and that
Yeah.
therefore funnier and more fun to watch than the original.
Sure.
This movie doesn't go for that blood. How maybe Rob Zombie kind of does. It depends on who you ask, but this movie doesn't. And I appreciate that it takes the Shape seriously as a scary personality.
me
And
too. Yeah.
I appreciate that the Shape kills a child and makes you question the logic of decency in terms of movies. Like in terms of movie slashers, they're crossing lines that they haven't crossed in most slashers. I think that it's pretty good. And it's not the greatest movie ever made. It doesn't hold a candle to the original. No sequel usually does.
Yeah.
But as far as it comes, I think that there's a lot of positive things you can say about this movie, and that alone, like with a critical eye, I can say positive things. Not just so much, not even just like I enjoyed watching it, but there are certain things about it that I'm glad that they made the choices that they made.
Okay.
I think that it's pretty good. I don't know. It's a 5. It's 5 out of 10.
5-star. You heard it here on Straight Children Podcast.
No.
Ray,
I
Yeah,
forgot what metric we're using. So
Where are we? Who am I? What? Juice, what's your 5 spot?
catch up to you bitches.
Number 5 spot is gonna be Mandy.
Oh,
It's
Mandy!
gonna be Mandy, my boy Nick Cage. This is a movie that I am pleased to say that like when I initially watched it alone, I was like, man, I mean, I saw some appeal in it, and I was able to mostly recognize the kind of artistic value in it. But it wasn't until we kind of had it sat down and had our discussion, and people were able to kind of pull things out that I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, that I really started appreciating this film, and that's why I said like I really wanted to rewatch some of these films for the top 10 to really kind of solidify what I thought about these films. So Mandy, I still think is not a super accessible film.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily to its detriment. It is a little bit, I guess, and as far as recommending goes, but I'm happy that this guy made the movie that he wanted made. I think I said that in even our original, and I was like, even if it's not super accessible, I feel like even in watching this film and saying like there's some critiques to it, like he made the movie he wanted to make. Like,
Yeah.
good on that guy. And I appreciate it more now than I did in my initial watch before we originally talked about it. And some of the problems that I had with the film don't bother me as much. Maybe they do a little bit, but not as much as when I initially watched it alone, and I was like really kind of critiquing it and was like, what? And kind of confused, honestly. I needed to kind of discuss it out to get a clear head about it, honestly. So I'm, that was certainly one of the big benefits of the cast is really locking down that movie, and I think it's a really solid movie. I still don't think it's a very accessible movie. It's not something I could just throw out and be like, you need to watch Mandy to every, because it's very particular, because the guy who made it the way he wanted to do, and I'm glad he did, because I feel like he's a very like artistic kind of guy. He did it from a certain approach that I am able to appreciate now, and even originally like was able to recognize that like as an artistic piece. But it's still You know, not an easy recommend. You can't just throw out Mandy for anybody to fucking watch. I mean, it's very particular.
Yeah.
But in what it is and what it does and what it wants to be, it's great. It's good. It's good. There's maybe some little nitpicky things I have with it, but I think overall, if like I could score it again, it would be bumped up from what I don't remember exactly what I originally scored it, but I feel like it would be bumped up at least like a half a star. So on the rewatch and being able to discuss it and chew on it and think on it and kind of revisit it again, I had a much higher appreciation for Mandy, and it's taken my number 5 spot.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you, brother.
Comments reserved.
Same. My number 5 spot is going to be a movie that I talked about on the show. We did not cover it on the show. It's a little movie called Director's Cut. This is the movie that
is this the
Yes, it
okay.
is. Absolutely. It was a crowd-funded movie. It was written and stars Penn Jillette from Penn and Teller. This movie, I think, officially came out in like 2016, but it was just like if you crowdfunded it, you could watch it. So it was like one of those things that it didn't get a wide release and it wasn't put out like physically until this year. So I counted it on my list because there's literally no way I could have seen it until this year. That's kind of how I tackle these.
Well, irrelevant.
These top 10 lists each year. Yeah. So this movie, like I said, I talked about it a little bit previously, but it's a meta horror movie. And like, I gotta say, I've never seen a fucking movie like this ever before in my life. It really, really stood out to me when I watched it. It's super creepy and it's also pretty funny. It's like this really nice evolution of like meta horrors. We're kind of like at this place in horror movies where like meta horror is no longer fresh. It's like getting kind of tired, I guess.
We've been meta horror since fucking Scream in the 90s.
See, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a little played out now. Like, so Scream,
yeah.
I mean, if you want to go back even further, the Wes Craven's New Nightmare and then Scream and Scream
true.
2, and then the rise of Leslie Vernon. I mean, every once in a while, you know, Cabin in the Woods, like maybe every 5 years, you get this like great meta horror movie, and it's sort of like a new evolution where you're like, wow, I never would have thought of that. This is like the next evolution of meta horror, in my opinion. We're like, wow, I never fucking would have thought of that shit. So like,
I'm going to ask. I don't remember the specifics of this movie, but I know you brought it up before. Don't spoil it, because I would like to watch it. Your placement on this list has convinced me.
I won't spoil it, but just to kind of paint a brief picture of what is actually happening. So, in this movie, there is a movie that has been crowd-funded, and Penn Jillette's character is one of the top crowd funders. He put a lot of money forward to this movie being made, and it was completed, and he did not like it. So he took the movie that was made and then shot additional footage on his own and spliced it into the movie. And throughout the entire movie, he's also doing like a director's commentary over the top of it. So like as soon as it starts, there's an audio commentary happening. And
Shut the fuck up.
He's explaining everything that's happening in the movie. And he even tells you, like, you know, I gave them a lot of money. I was a crowdfunder. I didn't like this. I shot this scene. This is why I shot this scene. And the scenes that he shot are scenes of him essentially like stalking the star of the movie and splicing those scenes in. And he's talking about it in a way that's not creepy, and it makes sense in his brain, but it's obviously wrong. And he should not be doing it.
Damn.
And it just like sort of evolves from there and gets creepier and creepier. And it's just like I said, I just never seen anything like this before, and it totally took me off guard. I was very pleasantly surprised by it. It's creepy, it's funny, it's totally original, and I highly recommend it. Director's cut, totally worth your time.
Wow. I remember you talking about what you've been watching. I'm surprised this made such a impact on your list.
It did.
Such a high spot.
It did.
Higher than Halloween. That's pretty important for you.
Incorrect. I haven't talked about
He
it.
hasn't
Oh
talked
no, I'm
about
sorry. It
Halloween
was
yet.
your.
I did.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, never
And
mind.
you did.
Yes.
God, that means Halloween's in the top. That's a mistake. That's such a mistake. Anyways,
Randy, what's your number 4 pick?
Number 4. I literally, since we started recording this, I have swapped my number 3 and number 4, and it's been going back and forth like that since I
Yeah.
started writing this list. I'm going with Suspiria 2018.
number 4.
That's a mistake.
That is not a mistake.
The guy from the guy who hasn't even talked about Halloween yet. Jesus Christ.
I know you guys have your little baby crusades against specific movies, but let me get this out. Suspiria was a great movie, and it was great for a number of reasons. First of all, it paid pretty good attention to the original in terms of like it all of the aspects of the original setting are still there. They're basically using the same chessboard and the same position of pieces to create an entirely different kind of movie, which I think is fucking interesting. And it can also go really badly. So the fact that it doesn't for me is a huge plus. I think that it is long. That's a negative for most. To me, I didn't feel the length of it though. I also like it subverts. I know you did,
mostly
Mr.
the beer choice. Though,
Beer. Drink a Coors Light. Maybe you'll like it this time.
God damn.
I think that between the audio and the subversion of elements from the original and subversion of what you expect from any movie, really, not just by knowing the original, in addition with the performances of the actors, there's not a whole lot that I want to complain about with this movie. And let me see, what did I give this movie? I'm trying to remember. I think it was a 4.5 or a 5.
4.5 or 4? 4 or 4.5.
Let me see. Suspiria, I gave it a 4.75. So yeah,
wow.
right.
Damn.
So I understand that Rob has qualms with this movie. I understand if people see it as pretentious. I also don't care about those things.
As you shouldn't.
Yeah, and like this movie is fucking fun to watch for me. I enjoyed like watching sort of like the politics of the witches sort of going against each other. I enjoyed hearing Tom York, which is fucking great. Like I haven't listened to any new Tom York in years, and it didn't even register for me until after the film when I saw his name in the credits. I was like, oh shit, of course it was. It's fucking great. I love the subversive ending, which I won't go into too deeply for those who, or I know we're spoiler zone now, but I don't even want to describe it really because it's hard to describe. I love the visuals, like that scene, which is like what people are calling the scene of the movie, where a woman is basically being tortured to death by another woman's dance.
Wait, I gotta talk about it, Randy.
Huh?
Oh, God.
It's so impactful. It
really is.
It's more gruesome than anything in Terrifier. It's more like, to me, it's
absolutely. Also, it was I saw people critiquing that, like, oh, the CGI. Dude, that shit was all practical effects. All practical. You can watch them make that shit fucking amazing. Anyways, continue.
I'm gonna say it's a better kill than you'll see in almost any other movie this year. I will say.
Certainly better than Halloween.
Not after your little tiddlywinks fight between you two about what's worse. I don't give a shit about.
Back and wrestle.
The important thing is that Suspiria is fucking number 4 worthy. Halloween is number 5 worthy, and you can both suck it.
Repping both.
I like it. Juice, what's your number 4?
I'm going A Quiet Place. I know when we picked up this movie, you kind of pull at the thread and it pulls the sweater apart a little bit. But at the same time, I mean, this is an original movie. He wrote
Weezer reference.
Yeah, he wrote this movie the acting in it was great from everybody. Yeah. And even though the ending might have been like, oh, a little sappier, like, oh, a little, but I mean, we're talking about like overlap, like, oh, the first scene carried it so much. Man, this movie was well crafted.
It was.
As far as a horror movie goes, as far as like an original creature, an original world that you have to survive in, I thought A Quiet Place did a great job of establishing all of those things. A family that's believable, a family that you can kind of relate to, and in the struggles that you kind of can like relate to. I mean, just the world, it felt real. Like, I could see that. Like, okay, I would understand how those rules make sense and apply. And there were some things like, maybe we're a little loose, a little slop. But ultimately, as an original horror film with original creatures, an original world, original characters, and everything like that, I felt like you did a damn good job, man. And to the point to where I felt for the characters, and even though maybe kind of toward the ending was a little hammy and what happened with the family and everything, I can't deny that it didn't like pull on my heartstrings. It didn't, I didn't like feel the weight of the choices that these people made and the sacrifices that they made and everything like that. So, maybe it's a little hammy and everything like that and how it kind of ended up, but it was still effective and still a damn entertaining movie. Ultimately, is like I kind of talked about, like that whole like popcorn horror and stuff like that. I mean, I felt like this movie really was able to successfully kind of ride that thin line of where you're able to really please your audience, suck them into this universe that hasn't existed. It's not a sequel, it's not a spin-off, it's not a cover, it's not a reimagining. This is a new fucking film, and pulling them in and everything, and making you feel for the characters and understand the world and sympathize with the world and everything like that, and like kind of the true horror of like, what if I was in this situation? Kind of that old school, like, what if this was me? What if I was here? And how would I deal with this? And how could it easily fall apart, if I made one simple mistake? I mean, this movie is very effective in that, and it's entertaining at the same time, well acted, well crafted, like, I don't know, it's just, it's got some nitpicky flaws, but I think it's worthy of a number 4 spot for me.
I think, like,
an original film.
I didn't take it into account for myself because to me it's almost a detriment. But I agree with you. Like, this movie hits that popcorn movie effect. Like, it's the same way that like The Sixth Sense did. It sort of has that broader appeal to where it's not quite so gruesome that like a standard person wanting to see a movie will be like disgusted by it. Yeah. Nor does it have so little like tangible like fear moments that nobody's scared by it and they just kind of like laugh at it or just think, oh, how stupid is that? Like, it does toe that line really well. So from a populist perspective, this movie is maybe the most successful movie of the year. It hits that sort of it like last year's It. It hits that sort of like middle ground where it's like where I think that movie was. I think it was kind of sort of like chemically engineered to be that sort of like popcorn favorite, whereas this one feels more organic from the mind of John Krasinski. I believe he was a writer on this, was he not?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay.
That's what I thought. I didn't know if I was misremembering that, but yeah. So like, it seems really accessible, and not just that, but it also seems really successful in making it scary without making it too disgusting to watch.
Yeah.
People. So yeah, that is a plus for it, even if it's not one that I would consider in my list.
Yeah, I didn't talk about this in my list, or I haven't and I won't. But what's his wife's name? I can't remember. Anyway, she made the movie for me. Mary Poppins, if you will. That fucking bathtub scene. She just wrecked it, man. Like, holy shit. Congratulations, you can act. Holy hell. Anyway, my number 4 spot.
Go.
You ready for it?
I know.
It's Halloween.
What's coming?
It's Halloween.
Well, at least it's not number 1.
Emily
Thank Christ.
Definitely definitely not number one. I thoroughly enjoyed Halloween 2018. I didn't love it. However, what I do have to say for it is that everything I expected from a sequel to the original Halloween that's coming out in the year 2018, it checked all the boxes for me.
Okay.
It really did.
What were those things?
So, Michael Myers.
Okay.
He comes out.
Who's that?
Fuck. I don't know. He's in Star Trek or something. I don't fucking know.
What did you love about Michael Myers in this film?
He is absolutely relentless and scary and terrifying and brutal. He's everything that you want from like a legitimate slasher movie. Like,
Okay, I agree.
a scary motherfucker.
He was
Like
good.
he's a force to be reckoned with that you cannot stop.
Brutal,
Yes.
but unpredictable.
Yes. He had great kill sequences.
Yeah.
For sure. Also, something that this is probably the most difficult thing that the movie had to tackle, but I think it pulled off well. Is it brought Laurie Strode back,
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
and her character didn't suck. You know, how hard is that to do? Like
Yeah.
watching her character come back in like H2O.
So, yeah, like what, 40 years later?
Yeah,
50 years. Yeah.
in H2O, she was like, okay.
Yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot going on there. Resurrection is like fucking unwatchable. It really is.
I'm gonna pick that for the cast one day. I've never seen it, and I'm gonna make you guys watch it again.
But like, you know, the original Halloween and Halloween 2, you know, Laurie Strode's in both of those, obviously, and they're fucking great. They're absolutely great. But it, you know, barring those, this is like the best Laurie Strode, period. Like in the other movies that she's in, this is the best Laurie Strode.
Really?
For sure.
No, I agree. I agree with you.
Absolutely.
Better than? Oh, whatever.
Better than no. Say what you said. Say what you're going for.
Better. You guys think this is a better Halloween sequel than
No.
Halloween 2?
No,
He's
I
saying-
said barring 1 and 2.
Barring 1 and 2.
No.
Okay, sure. Well, sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, sure.
I don't even
Because
love 2 as much as I love the Laurie
I
Strode.
love 2.
I love 2.
No, no.
Man. That's
2
That's the
2
thing
is
about
a
this
fine
that
movie.
people-
It's a fine movie, but
Dude.
Laurie Strode's characterization, I think, is strongest.
Well, characterization, but you
Yeah,
have to account
yeah,
for the
yeah.
movie overall.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just accounting for. I thought that's what the premise was the best
Yeah,
Laurie.
I mean, it's actually.
She spends half the movie in a hospital bed,
Sure,
so it's
yeah.
kind of, you know, she does what she can. Anyway, they take Laurie's character, they develop her in a way that's logical.
I
And
think that's a
it's-
low bar, though, man. I mean,
No,
when
no,
you're
I'm not
comparing,
done. I'm not
okay,
done. I'm
okay.
not done.
I mean,
I'm
like,
not
the best Laurie Strode since Halloween 2. It's like, well,
I'm not
I
done.
mean, what are we dealing with here?
I know. That's okay. So Laurie's character does not suck. She comes back. It makes sense. It's logical. It's, in my opinion, it's well written,
Okay.
which is very difficult to do. So it brings like the old school and the new school in like even parts. And I feel that they blend well. Like, so all the second act that you're talking about, that's actually like on Halloween night, where you're following Michael Myers.
Yeah.
He's like going through the homes and killing people. For sure, best part of the movie. I
Yeah.
totally agree
Okay.
with you. I love that shit, especially like the long tracking shots where
Yeah.
they're following him walking through like people's side yards, picking up knives, picking up hammers, doing whatever he's doing.
Yeah.
That shit is like,
It's about the killer. It's about the hunt. It's
yeah.
about the night.
I mean, that's
Ooh.
fucking Halloween.
Yeah.
That is like, when you boil the first movie down, that's the scariness.
that's what you want from the movie.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
not
for
what
sure.
the first movie does, though.
It's,
First movie
I mean,
doesn't really
that's like-
follow Michael.
no, but that's like this.
But I
that's
like
the scary part of it. You know what I'm saying? It
No,
kinda,
no,
like,
I-
distills that.
I also agree that that's the best part of the movie. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like, if you're making the comparison, the first movie actually doesn't follow Michael Myers in that granular detail. The fact that he pops
Right,
up
yeah.
anywhere is the scary part of the first movie.
Yeah, I'm just like him slashing on Halloween night specifically. I'm saying is like
Yeah.
No,
the
I
scary
agree.
part. Yeah, and they kind of boil that down for the second act of this movie, but they bookend it with like new stuff that you for sure don't like. I thought it was pretty good.
It's not that. It's just like
Yeah,
Yeah.
So the first act, the podcasters. I don't love the podcasters.
Yeah.
I don't. They're whatever. They
Nobody
serve.
should.
They do serve.
Nobody should love the body.
They do serve a purpose though, and I understand that. And it's sort of like they're kind of born out of necessity to like info dump for sure, because there's 40 years in between these two movies.
Except they could have done it with here's the The problem with podcasts that I have, you said that, like they have to serve the purpose of infodump, and
Yeah.
you see it as like a necessary, like evil, like
Kind
oh,
of.
they had
Yeah.
except you had a daughter there, like the whole
Yeah, but she
feel,
doesn't know.
the feel between like the whole like show me, don't tell me thing,
Mhm.
like could have been so much better between the
Maybe,
daughter
yeah,
and the
you might have
mother
a point,
instead of just like literally looking at the screen and telling me what's going on.
But so.
But it also needs red shirts. This movie needs red shirts.
It does need red shirts.
That's what they provide. These are cooters for the right.
They're not even cooters.
We
They're
could-
not cooter
We
material.
can for sure talk about this for at least another hour. I'm gonna
I
try
know,
and
I know.
blaze through real quick. So it's got the things that I personally wanted out of it. I got for sure, and it didn't totally shit the bed. It's got like a brutal killer. Michael Myers comes back. They treat him right. Laurie Strode comes back. They treat her right. They've got like the dumb high school kids doing whatever they're doing on Halloween, smoking dope, babysitting,
Yeah.
whatever, getting killed. And they've got like the awesome slasher scenes on Halloween night, which you gotta have. They bring a lot of new stuff into the story, which I think, especially in the third act, was fucking cool, man. I liked the third act. The first act was kind of, they're covering ground. They got 40 years to cover. They do what they got to do. I don't think they did it poorly. Did they do it absolutely the best they possibly could? Probably not, but it's sort of like, fine. It's passable for me. Overall, I got the atmosphere. I got the scariness. I got the old characters coming back and being treated well. I don't know, man. I like this movie. I like it a lot. It's not perfect, but it takes my number 4 spot for sure.
Alright.
Great job.
Hey, thanks. Randy, what's your number 3?
Number 3. Okay, now we're entering into the territory of movies that I don't have a lot of strong critiques for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although this was sort of in the running with Suspiria for me. Hereditary is my number 3.
Whoa. I love this goddamn cast. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's gonna be number 1. I don't know what's happening.
I continue to be surprised.
Me too. From
Wow.
everything.
Well, yeah, I'm here to help.
I love it.
So
love it.
Hereditary for me, like it's on the top of a lot of lists, and I totally get why. Like as maybe the biggest fan of The Witch that there is, I want to think anyway. I was excited about this fucking movie. I was excited about the Steve Eggers movie, and I was not disappointed at all. I maybe a little bit. But here's the thing, like. The thing I was disappointed about is that it wasn't The Witch. I love The Witch so much that I wanted to see more of the same.
Too.
And this movie did, huh?
Me and you, brother. God, I love that movie so much.
That movie's fucking great. And this
It
movie is also
unbelievably
great.
good.
The movie's also great, but it's not the same movie. And I think that's maybe my biggest qualm with it is that it's not that I already love, which is maybe the same problem you're having with Halloween.
You're
But
kind
let's
of
look
blowing
at
my mind that it's number 3. God damn.
It's my number 3. I think this movie, first of all, okay, let's just go down the technicals. This movie is absolutely beautifully cinematographized.
Yeah,
I'm gonna made up that word.
No, I agree.
I'm keeping up with your drinking. It's cinematographized, super good. It's also it's also like acted in impeccably, I would say. I don't
Tony
have
Collette.
complaint. Toni Collette is a fucking god. I love her. I've not seen anything she's been in where I've not been like completely sold on whatever she's doing.
She plays a certain role very well.
I don't know if she, I don't know if she's all that limited. She plays conflicted well. Maybe
I wouldn't necessarily that she's limited. Maybe a little pigeonholed.
Maybe
not by her own detriment. Like
I don't
think she's not capable, but you know, maybe a little.
100%. The thing is, like, I think Toni Collette could do anything, and I would be on board. She's proven to me that she's able to play fragile and strong in the same character in multiple different facets, multiple different kinds of characters. She's both strong and fragile, and I think that's fucking amazing for any actor to be able to do that in differently characterized ways. So that, like, not and setting aside Toni Collette, the rest of the supporting cast is great. Like, everybody.
Really, there's nobody I could say like, oh, they really shit on this one.
The reason for me that it's number 3 is that, and I think like this is maybe personal bias still, it's not as good as The Witch to me. It doesn't hold that sort of like, sacred territory. It doesn't feel like
So
it
damn
doesn't
good.
feel like a story of sacred, like like a repulsive like anti. I don't know, like The Witch. The Witch hits these certain notes that are very sort of. It's very black and very dark, and this movie hits those dark territories, but it does not hit like. It doesn't hit like that primal level for me. It doesn't hit like maybe it's the lack of historical significance. Maybe that's,
Yeah.
but
Well, the Witch is so ingrained with like
the history
stick
of
to
all
the
that.
language and the history and the aesthetic.
Yeah, the history and what they're building out of, what Dave Eggers was building out of with that script is so interesting to me that I think it adds an extra element that this movie can't compete with, because while it's very interesting, it's also very modern, and it's also
This is not the same director as The Witch, by the way.
Wait, what? The same writer, isn't it?
I don't think so.
Am I wrong?
It's not the same director. I think that was the common mistake that was made.
This is David Eggers' like directorial debut is Hereditary. I thought you were just making the comparison because
he didn't direct Hereditary. According to IMDb, Ari Aster directed and wrote this movie.
Oh, Ari Aster, right.
So I've completely fucked on this, but I was.
Yeah.
It's okay.
So
I understand the comparison. I'm gonna draw a similar comparison as well. It's the type of movie that's being made.
Eggers' next movie is The Lighthouse. It's coming out next year. It's shot in black and white, starring what's his face?
Yeah, Green Goblin.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I can't come back from that. That's fucked up. I really thought this was a Dave Eggers movie.
Yeah, no.
It's been made a lot.
It's Rob Eggers. They got the wrong fucking Eggers. Holy shit.
The comparison has it's not completely unheard of. The comparison has been like it's the type of like slow burn kind of psychological more
A24.
Yeah.
The horror movies that A24 kind of tends to put
so
out.
It's not out of the realm
art
for you to make
for
you to make these comparisons.
It's very kind of you guys to cover up for me, but this is embarrassing.
No, seriously. Any critique, I think of any critique I have heard of this movie, any review I've heard of this movie, a comparison to The Witch has been made in every single one. So it's not. That's
I'm genuinely shocked that I had this all so wrong, but so I'm gonna do myself the only favor that I have, which is to set all that aside, and let's consider the movie Hereditary. The movie Hereditary has great acting, has great cinematography, has fucking an interesting story, which while is more like I was comparing it negatively to a movie that has nothing to do with it, but it hits something primal, but not quite as primal as that movie, which is something that I was counting against it, which I guess doesn't really apply so much now. But overall, I think this movie, like, it tells an interesting story in a modern context, which is the story of like sort of internal rejection from your family and like sort of subversive and not subversive, but sort of like bubbling underneath the surface, some sort of antagonism between you and your family. You want to be a great creator. Toni Collette wants to be a great creator. She wants to make creative and interesting things, and she does, but she also can't do it because partially her family is interceding. It's interceding on her thoughts. She can't. It's almost like the separation between the self and the family.
Yeah.
Even though like she strives for that at the beginning, kind of, and then by the end she's struggling to hold those two disparate pieces of cloth together by string and thread and hope. And it's like, and by the end of it, it's already too late. The way the ending ends, I love a down note movie, and this movie ends on a fucking down note if there ever was one.
Does it?
Down note.
I don't know. Like, setting aside all my complete misunderstandings of the making of this, I still think it's a fucking great movie, and I will stand by the spot it's in regardless. I'm just gonna drop it there because Jesus.
Deal. Juice, what's your number 3 spot?
Oof. Here we go. Number 3, Suspiria. 2018. And here's the thing about this movie. I gotta be honest and preface by saying, because I think it can make an impact in the future and overall, but I gotta be truthful and honest. It was hard for me to watch this movie. This movie came out and
still number 3.
Well, hang on. Yeah, it came out in a limited release in the United States, few theaters. It's long as shit, which completely, as far as my perspective in Korea, it didn't come out in theaters at all whatsoever. It hasn't come out in theaters in Korea. So trying to find somebody to upload this movie in any kind of digital stream at 2.5 hours, I imagine is daunting. Like, nobody wants to deal with that shit. It's an art house kind of film. So to watch this movie, I had to watch it in a less than ideal kind of viewing.
Yeah, okay.
So to preface that by saying it, but I'm trying to stay true because I wasn't able to get on the cast to review it originally. So as far as this, I'm trying to stay true to like in how I've seen it so far and how I've experienced it so far. It is hitting number 3 on my list. And so to say that is, goddamn, this movie is spectacular to me. Spectacular. To take a movie that's so well known and like so stylized and to make it your own is so impressive to me. And it's so applicable too because we just talked about The Shining. And I feel a lot of the parallels that we all agreed like made The Shining so great applies to this movie. The look of it, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And the subversion of like having to compare itself to such a well-known movie in such a like deep entrenched fucking giallo, but like to stand apart from that, to be its own is so impressive. You can completely separate these movies if you wanted to. They're so different.
Then why didn't he?
God, dude, but it's.
What do you mean?
No,
why didn't he?
But no.
Movie.
I feel like every choice he made this movie better. Like when you're talking about Suspiria, like he made the whole like witches like make sense to me. Like yes, like I'm able to look at it and be like yes, like and able to like flesh it out under his own merit. Like I'm gonna take the story and like I'm really gonna like push it to this end and push it like. Every decision he made artistically to me made perfect sense in elevating this movie and separating it at the same time. Like, I want this to be an expression of how I felt about Suspiria. Because it doesn't look like, I love the muted colors. I love how it stands apart. God damn, dude. I think this movie is beautiful. How it's number 3. It's long. It's fucking long.
Yeah.
It's a long movie. I don't know if it just The Shining is fucking long.
It is.
And you even said like it took you 3 or 4 views to like see like how I feel the same. Like it's so beautiful. Like the soundtrack too as well. I loved how he took these things. Him adding the whole idea of like adding the dance to the witchcraft, like making that a part of it. Like when you dance, it's was so brilliant to me. It's just like, fuck yes. Like he elevated the original. We've talked about the original Suspiria and we're like, yeah, it's more style than substance. Mm-hmm. In this way, he was able to make it style, but still its own. He wasn't even copying the same style and give it so much substance to me. Like the idea, spoiler, behind like her being like the mother Suspiria. I want this dude to fill out the trilogy. Mm-hmm. I want him to so bad. I think this movie, even in my limited ability to see it and to hear it and to experience it, was mesmerizing. I thought it was beautiful. I thought the decisions he made to separate it and to elevate it and to make it its own were every single time brilliant. That fucking scene where the girl's dancing and that bitch gets torn apart. Holy shit.
It is a great scene.
Because even when you're talking, because we need to talk about this is a horror podcast. So even like, oh yes, it's a beautiful film and stuff like that. That shit being practical effects,
It's brutal.
is fucking brilliant. To make, like we talk about, like, oh, like the thing, like, oh, and the practical effects, like, to make this girl get like goddamn ripped apart in any way that you would think is completely impractical, to say that has to be CGI, and it's not. It's fucking not 1 ounce. It's all practical effect. Is so brilliant, and I feel like and I'm trying to be fair. The only reason that this movie takes the number 3 spot is because I have experienced it in a limited capacity, and I'm trying to be honest. I feel like if I was able to experience it in its full capacity in a theater with like the beautiful soundtrack, like booming down, like it easily like could have been in contention for number 1. I think this movie, I am like enamored with this movie. I think it is beautiful. I think it is mesmerizing. I think the decisions that were made behind it were brilliant, and I think it's fucking great. Fucking Suspiria, number 3.
I want to say,
but still, even the sound and the visuals I'm experiencing in a limited capacity, I have to be true to that. I have not seen it in its full capacity, and I hate that.
You didn't miss much.
Yeah, I wouldn't fucking hate that, because
you missed
even
much.
in that limited, even in that limited capacity, I was just like hanging on every, like, God, so mesmerizing. I think this movie is goddamn beautiful. Hang on, here's some.
We are drunk.
Oh god.
I felt that it was weird that Tilda Swinton was the old man. I was like, why is that? I was like, what? That probably is the biggest thing to me, honestly. I was like, why the fuck was that even? Like, why was that?
There was no reason.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with that. But
like, they even admitted it. There is no reason.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's not like she's like, I was like, oh god damn.
Hang on. Are you done?
Yeah. Well,
right.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
We gotta move on.
Not to totally cut you off, but we're at like 2 hours already.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, my number 3 spot, fucking Hereditary, Randy. Hereditary.
Hey!
Whoa, there you go.
Maybe you'll have your facts together.
Yeah. To cover it quickly, I saw this movie for the first time in New Orleans this year in April. Ari Aster was there. He introduced it. He's man, a few words. Let me tell you. Anyway. This movie is by far the scariest movie I have seen in 2018. In my opinion, like, just the way that this movie hit me, it fucking scared me. That's hard to do considering we talk about horror movies every week of the year. We have been for years, We see a lot of stuff. You're lucky if you see one truly scary movie a year.
Yeah.
This is the scary movie of 2018 for me. Fucking terrifying. Also, I love how they cut the trailer for this. Like, you get in here, you see the first 20 minutes of the movie, the character whom you think the movie is about decapitated at like minute 20. She's done.
Yeah.
What is the rest of the fucking movie about? You have no idea. It's a movie that is sold to you in a way that like it intrigues you enough, and it doesn't like totally lie to you, but it lies to you just enough to get you in the theater, and then it's just got you like right in its fucking palm, and it's like, oh, you're mine now. You're fucking mine now.
Oh,
it's
damn.
It's fucking scary as hell. Toni Collette kills it. Like this. Spoilers, by the way.
Yeah.
The end of this movie, where she is floating and decapitates herself with a piano string,
holy shit,
is insane.
That is the fucking scene of the year.
I don't know if it's that scene or it's the first decapitation.
Or
Both decapitations
exactly.
are great.
Not necessarily the scene, but the fact that it happened.
Dude,
like
no.
like.
So not this scene when it happened. It's the scene after the fact,
Sure,
where
yeah.
Toni Collette goes out into the car and finds her daughter's body with no head,
and the boy's
then
laying in his bed.
and you hear her screaming, and then it cuts to the severed head on the side of the road covered in ants, and it just sits there for like a full
Those
minute.
ants, man.
Yeah.
Those
And
ants
you just
were
hear her
really.
screaming. That is terrifying.
Yeah, it really is.
I will never forget that scene.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. This movie is the shit.
And it's only number 3. Damn,
It's
what's
only
number
number
1?
three.
Yeah, that is great.
We already talked about this movie. That's kind of all I wanted to add. Hereditary is the fucking shit. Randy, what's your number 2 spot?
Number 2. I'm gonna go quicker. This is Annihilation. Annihilation is my number 2.
Yeah.
I loved this movie. I thought that it was well acted. I thought that it was such a unique premise and idea, and so much so that I read the book, and I think they're both like they're sort of like equal counterparts.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't want to spend too much time on it because I know we're going way over, but I think that this movie is fucking fabulous. It's about sort of like trauma and how trauma doesn't leave you and instead informs the rest of your life, and whether or not that's a good thing. Like, usually people consider it to be a bad thing, but it might not be. Sort of I don't know, like the integration of experience into your life. That's really what it is. Like, it's about constant changing, constant adaptation, and constant rebirth within new frameworks of thinking. Although in this movie, it takes those like sort of like adaptations of thinking and turns them into very visceral, real objects, biological objects. And like, I don't know, I really reacted to it. It was recommended to me hard by somebody that I know, that I was working with at the time, and I was not disappointed, even with all the gushing that person gave towards me. I was like, okay, well, it can't be that great. It's probably good. It's not that great. No, it's that fucking great. It's a fucking, like, it's not a movie that's a popcorn movie at all. It's not for general audiences, but I'm not really considering that. For me, it's a thinker. Absolutely, it's a thinker. It's a movie that requires you to pay attention and then to dissect. If you don't do those things, you will not enjoy this movie. I think that, like, those things notwithstanding, like those things as a given, this is one of the best movies of the year by far. It's an easy choice for a top 2 position for me. So that's Annihilation.
Annihilation. Justin, what is your number 2 pick?
Number 2 pick, siding with Randy, it's Annihilation.
No shit.
Hey,
It is Annihilation.
Damn.
I'm betting it's Rob too.
Well, it was
It's
tough. Honestly,
Oh.
It was a tough back and forth between the number 1, number 2 spot. This one could have easily taken the number 1 spot for me. I think I've seen it 4 times now this year, and each time I haven't felt like I lost anything each watch, which is impressive to me. I know it came out at the beginning of the year, but it's beautiful. The only thing that I kept going back and forth for the number 1 spot is that, you know, as far as horror goes, as far as this podcast goes, you know, the ending wasn't as horrific to me. I guess the bear aspect and some points before the bear aspect are kind of like tension building and stuff like that, but it's definitely more leaning kind of like sci-fi than just straight horror. So I feel like that's the only thing that kind of kept it maybe out of the number 1 spot. But it was a struggle. Honestly, I went back and forth and back and forth. This could have easily taken the number 1 spot. And it's a beautiful film. It's a well acted film. And also maybe to the fact that it's kind of based on an existing property, you know, that's not completely original as a film. Maybe like kind of detracted it. It's like, what is the best film this year? But still, fantastic. And every time I've seen it, I've enjoyed watching it. It's beautiful. The ideas behind it are beautiful. So, yeah.
Nice.
Number 2, Annihilation.
Number 2, fist bump.
No, Annihilation. My number 2, I feel like I might get some flack for this. I love Terrifier.
Oh God! How did I know you were gonna bring up fucking Terrifier?
I love Terrifier, man. So, as you guys are aware, I have a soft spot for slasher movies, and we already talked about
This whole list just fell apart.
Oh, God.
We're really building a good
Oh!
momentum there.
Okay, all right. We already talked about it a little bit because Justin brought it up. Terrifier. Like I said, like as far as like horror movie icons go, I cannot recall one that was released in a movie that was released in the past, like, I don't know, 5 years that's as memorable as Art the Clown. Like, for whatever reason, this movie is elevated by that actor and that character. So yeah, it's one of those things that I watched it twice this year. The first time I watched it alone, and it didn't really grab me. It wasn't that entertaining. I watched it for a second time with a friend, and like, I just had so much fucking fun watching this movie. Like watching Art the Clown, like it has like a certain level of like nastiness to
You
it.
hate women. That's what it is.
No, I absolutely do not. It has a certain level of like nastiness to it that generally might turn me off, but upon the second viewing, like watching this like fucked up clown have like a complete blast, just like, you know, fucking people up. For whatever reason, it's like entertaining as hell on a level that like you want a slasher villain to be.
Did you watch it closer to Halloween?
I did, yeah.
That was the detriment I felt when we originally covered this. I was like, man, I feel like next year I probably might want to watch this movie closer to Halloween because it's a Halloween center. It's on Halloween night.
Yeah.
And so I was like, this would be probably really good for this season.
Yeah, it's like it hits those like
so I feel that
those base things that I just am drawn to, being like slasher movies and movies that take place on Halloween. Checks both those boxes for sure. Anyway, it also like subverts enough like standard slasher shit to make it interesting and like set it apart from the rest of the bunch. In that, like, you know, spoiler warning or whatever, it's sort of like Art the Clown is not just a normal person, kind of like in the way that Michael Myers is not a normal person. And also, you know, Randy already mentioned it, like he pulls a fucking gat out. Like if he's not having fun, like the whole movie is about Art the Clown having fun. He's entertaining himself, he's playing with his food. The second he's not having fun anymore, he'll just shoot you in the head and then move on to the next one. And it's just,
I gotta say,
yeah.
I kind of like that interpretation. I do.
Yeah, he's totally playing with his food. And the movie is made by his face. Like the expressions on that actor's face playing that sadistic clown, that it makes the movie, man. If anybody else played that clown, it wouldn't be the same. He fucking kills it. And I want to see that man play that character again. I really do.
I agree. I would like to
for
see
sure.
that again. I would like some. So really, what's the most important is it's better than Halloween 2018.
It is.
Okay.
Good.
Good.
I enjoyed it.
Oh boy,
I
you're really undercutting it. Bob.
I enjoyed it more than. So
bottom line, Terrifier. That's the bar to judge it by.
Terrifier is for sure like a dumb fucking slasher movie. It does just enough to elevate itself, and it hits just enough of like my pleasure points to where I enjoyed the hell out of it, man.
Is your pleasure point women being cut from vagina to mouth?
Okay.
Not particularly. The first time I watched
Are
it, I saw
you
that
sure?
Scene. Yeah, the first time I saw that scene, I was like, this movie's disgusting. This movie, fuck this movie. It's like fine now. I guess it's fine now. I don't know. You're trying to trap me, and I don't appreciate it.
I'm I don't have to try, Rob.
Really, all you need to take from Rob's review is Terrifier's better than Halloween.
Shall we do number one?
Shall
we do number one?
Number one.
Yeah, Terrifier. It's dumb. I like it. The end. Randy, what's your number one spot?
Number one. You ready?
Yeah, I actually am ready.
Yeah.
Mandy.
Okay,
Such a fine girl.
Mandy, you're a fine film.
You're a fine girl.
I love this fucking movie, and like the thing is, this is a movie that I was, huh? What's that?
Give it to me, Mandy Randy.
Mandy Randy.
This movie is a movie that I was actually prepped to not like because people were telling me that I would like it. And so there's no for me
Randy
to
tried
like,
to like it despite you
fuck
bitches
you.
or not to like
I tried not to like it in order to spite all of America, but I was wrong, and I can admit that. It's number one. This fucking movie's great.
Yeah.
We've brought it up already. Justin brought it up earlier, and I'm gonna say that to your points, Justin, to your
Yeah.
negatives, you said that you think you wouldn't recommend it. You wouldn't be able to recommend it to anybody, and that's true. But I do think you could recommend this to a broader populace than you're necessarily bringing up. Like
I don't agree.
I
I think this is a slim field of enjoyment.
No, I don't think so, man, because I'm not like an 80s sci-fi guy. I'm not a Nick Cage guy. I'm not a Stephen King like fiend that reads all his books. I'm not a novel like hound, horror novel hound. None of those things that this movie centers itself around stylistically are things that I personally am drawn
I feel
to.
like I'm being completely honest there because as far as like,
I-
okay, you're not like an 80s fiend or whatever, but you really enjoy movie or like things that are set around that time period. Like, you really enjoy Stranger Things, not because it's set in the 80s.
No. Stranger Things, I actually have a problem with how much 80s they rely on. I have
Yeah.
brought that
He's
up.
talked about it.
The fact that they respond
Let the
They
man
fo-
talk. Let the man talk about Mandy.
they focus on like the focus on nostalgia with Stranger Things is something that I actually have a problem with because it's so pandering. And the same thing with It. That's one of the problems I had with It. But it's not something I have a problem with this because it's not just the 80s. It's not just the general idea of the 80s and appealing to the nostalgia of the era. It's appealing to a
Yeah.
very specific niche nostalgia that I have no personal interest in and no personal stake in, but I become interested in and have a stake in because of this movie. This
Yeah.
movie fucking it brings a part like it brings these sort of like very vibrant like I never watched heavy metal really until like this movie came out and I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch it, and I watched it. And it's fucking it's its own thing. It's an
Yeah.
entire subculture that I have not really been a part of or ever been like involved in. This movie sort of informed that for me. And not only that, it's not only got this stylistic fucking vibrance and interest, it's also fucking it's got some levels on it. This fucking movie has some like thought-provoking shit that's going on. It's got the cooter of the year, first of all.
Yeah,
And-
absolutely. If you've hit that special top 10 cooters of the year, 2000.
Are you alright, man?
There's no quicker way for me to be prejudiced against a movie, and I try not to be this way. This is an admission of a fault, not so much more than it is anything else. But to tell me, hey, you're gonna love this. This is totally up your alley. That's something that makes me go like be very skeptical of that thing, no matter what. Somebody told me that about Mandy, and I was pleasantly and very happy to report at the end, presently surprised that it was absolutely right. It is up my alley in a way that it's up an alley that I never traveled before, that I am very much prepped for. I love this fucking movie. I think you could recommend it to a lot more people than you're saying. I don't think that it's necessarily accessible to everyone at all. I don't think any movie is really. It's not a popcorn film. It's not A Quiet Place. It's not it. But it is something that I think has a broader appeal because the appeal is not something that it's not dependent on you already having affections for this time period or this particular niche. You attain that love or that same sort of interest. And not only that, but this movie is also extremely detailed. Like every choice that's made is made for a symbolic or a metaphoric or some sort of reason. Like I haven't found a single decision that's been made about this movie from the soundtrack on down that hasn't had something to do with the story at play. And more than that, even like transcending all of that, it's able to hit like pleasure points of just horror dorks like fucking Cheddar Goblin shit that's just pure idiocy that you can just love on an everything is terrible level of like, man, humanity sure is dumb. You can enjoy it on a dumb level and a smart level. I can't say enough nice things about it. I really love this movie. Nick Cage has a lot of fucking dross in his closet, and this is the opposite of that. This shines for me. This is his best role for me personally. I love it. I love it.
Nice. Juice, what's your number one of 2018?
Number one is Hereditary.
Mm.
It is one of the reasons it kind of etched out Annihilation is because it was original piece. You know, it's not any kind of sequel or spinoff or any kind of thing like that. And when you're talking just like a horror movie, like a movie that people go to see and get fucking scared by, this movie is scary. There's the last 20 minutes of this film are fucking scary. And this from a dude who's seen that like a shit ton of horror. It's well acted. It's well written, kind of like some of the points you made before. It's it doesn't try to meet your expectations. It does its own thing, and that's kind of opposed to like Mandy's number one for Randy. Like, I feel like this movie, I don't feel like it's accessible to everyone, but I feel like anyone who has any kind of interest in horror, like I'm gonna go to the theater to see a horror movie, would be affected in this movie in that way. Yeah. Like I feel like maybe if somebody was like, I really love horror, it's Halloween time to go see my second horror movie of the year, and they went to go see Mandy, and they're like, what is this dumb shit? Like not necessarily they would be scared, like they're not getting that visceral reaction that they're going to the movie to experience. I'm going to get scared. I want the thrills. I want to like go with my boyfriend and like, like that whole kind of cliche thing behind horror. I feel like Hereditary is able to deliver that while also being like a beautiful masterpiece.
Yeah.
The shots, the writing, the acting, it's
the whole miniature house thing.
Yeah, it's all on point. It's all on point. It's not slop. It's tight. It's fucking scary. One of my biggest beefs too, I rewatched this movie and try to get ready for this episode. One of my biggest beefs, like like the whole ending was kind of a surprise or like confusing. And once I saw it coming, it didn't bother me as much. So I don't know, like, as far as the second viewing goes, now that I knew that it was coming, I wasn't expecting like, oh, they're crazy or, like expecting some kind of bullshit twist or something. It certainly didn't bother me as much. And I could kind of see where they had pulled at it a little more through the movie. So it held up on a rewatch, maybe even, got better. And Hereditary, it's just great. It's hard to deny. I feel like it can appeal to casuals. It can appeal to hardcore horror fans. No, I'm serious. Like people.
No, I just think the term casuals is funny.
Casuals.
The casuals. But see, there are some people who just want to go get the thrill, a couple times, fourth season and stuff like that. And this would give that to them. They would be pleased leaving the theater with seeing this. Maybe they would be a little confused, but as far as like the thrill that they're seeking, this would deliver.
You get it.
While also delivering like the deep, like artistic aspects that somebody who watches like fucking 4 horror movies a week,
deep.
Fucking a week is still surprised by and intrigued by and entranced by. So Hereditary, it takes my number one.
Nice.
Yeah.
The shallow and the deep.
Fucking casual.
My number one's gonna be it's gonna go to Mandy.
Hey!
Fucking love this movie, man. I had to watch it twice. First time I watched it, I was like, what the fuck is that even halfway about? I have no idea. I watched it again and like turned my phone off, like honed in. I was like, all right, I'm gonna drink this in hardcore and see how I feel about it. Loved it the second time. Like instantly fucking fell in love with it. Like this movie, we did a whole show on this. We talked about it, and everything I'm gonna say now I already said. This movie for me is like the visual representation of a Coheed and Cambria record. That's like
not everybody loves Coheed, Bob.
It's true. I only like some of their music. It's not like my favorite band or anything. That's just like the most cohesive way I can explain this movie
it really
to someone of like our age. most people know who Code Cameron is, or whatever. I like Heavy Metal. I still haven't seen. I do intend to watch it. I know it influenced this movie a lot, but that's not like a touchstone that I have to reference where Coheed for sure is. Nick Cage, not my favorite actor. I grew up with him. We all grew up with him in the 90s. He was all over the place. I feel like Cosmatos like fucking honed Nick Cage's talent. Like Nick Cage definitely has Dick, whatever this man's name is. He has talent, right? He's just I feel like maybe not everybody knows how to utilize him because he's just like so over the top and extreme, and he is in this movie in certain scenes, but for some reason it just makes sense in this like weird cosmic context, you know?
Yeah.
It's like the rest of the movie around him is almost like so over the top and like unwieldy.
It has
like
to
that watching Nick Cage be over the top and unwieldy is even less than. You're just like, oh yeah, that makes sense. He's
No,
he's
this
a
is
part
the
of
movie. This is the movie he's supposed to be in, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Because this is the movie that he is like, he goes over the top in movies that where it makes you be like, whoa, what's up with Nick Cage? In this movie, it's like, whoa, what's up with this goddamn movie?
Right. Yeah, exactly. He's just like meeting the movie on the level that it is meant to be on.
Right.
I love watching him in it. It's like everything is like so stylistically intentional, and like it's referencing a lot of things that I don't even know. Like, so it's got certain like animated sequences. It's got like claymation sequences. It's for sure referencing like Hellraiser with the biker gang. It's got like the crazy cult members. It's referencing novels, like fantasy novels for sure, with like the title cards and like the different fonts that they use are definitely referencing like heavy metal bands,
like grindcore bands.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's got so much that's going into it, and like maybe half of it I understand, the other half I have almost no context for, but I love immersing myself in that world and just like letting it wash over me and taking that ride with Nick Cage, man. Like watching him develop this relationship with his girlfriend, you're just kind of like thrown in with them, and it's like it's very subtle, but it has enough heart behind it to where like when shit hits the fan, you just like you're very much on Nick Cage's side, and you can't wait to watch him take like a 4-foot chainsaw to somebody's fucking head. And I love this movie. I love this fucking movie. He forges his own axe. He's the Grim Reaper. It's great. Nick Cage is the Grim Reaper. That's all I have to say. Mic drop. Mandy's the best movie of 2018.
It
StrikeChillinPodcast.com.
has the best cooter. Best cooter of the year.
It's got the
Best cooter I've ever damn seen. Go ahead and say that.
That's a guy.
Patreon, you can hear Justin talk about it.
If you want to hear me,
There's a
dive
special.
deeper.
There's a real special category for if you write a song about yourself.
Yeah.
And then jerk off to that.
Yeah, that's the specific thing.
That's very.
Yeah,
that's very
fucking.
special.
I'm so glad we agree on that. Like this, I think this movie's way more accessible than we're giving it credit for. I don't think you need to have a love for any of the elements in it to go into it and walk out feeling like this movie is a lot of spectacle, which is the reason that I put it above like Hereditary and Annihilation is one of the reasons, because it has sort of like base level spectacle, like fucking demon biker gangs and shit.
Yeah.
Here's the only thing I'll say against that. We're fucking nerds. We're horror nerds. We watch a lot of horror, and we like certain like aesthetics and things like that. There's so many bougie ass casual bitches that want to go like, woo, get the thrill out of a tension bitch fucking horror movie.
Oh, that's scary.
That would
They
go
can
into
watch A
this
Quiet
movie
Place and
just
fuck
be like,
themselves.
this is complete horse dog shit. And
Look,
Horse
you're
dog.
zeroing in on A Quiet Place fans, and that's not fair.
A Quiet Place. Dude, that movie was hot. That was some hot shit.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
It's
horse
hot
dog
shit. For
shit.
like, I can't imagine a Kardashian loving Mandy as much as they love A Quiet Place, but that is not what I mean by a general appeal. I think that more people
I really
like
don't think
Mandy.
it's a general
I think more
appeal.
people like Quiet Place than Mandy for sure because it's a broader
Yeah.
appeal. But I think that
Yeah.
more than we're giving it credit for. I think that even though it's based in a lot of very nerdy, very time specific
Well,
stuff, it doesn't necessarily inhibit people from enjoying it.
I will say, like, A Quiet Place is, that's like a popcorn
That's
movie.
the gold
for
standard
sure.
popcorn
But-
movie this year.
But I will say, like, Mandy came out like a super limited release, and it garnered like so much interest that they had no choice but to widen the release, which is the same shit that happened to It
that's good.
Follows when It Follows came out.
Yeah.
And so I fucking love that people made that happen. You know.
I
Oh,
will
yeah.
say I am.
That's the power of horror 2018, man.
I am honestly very surprised at the wide appeal and like praise that this movie got. I really was, because when I watched it, I was like, good for that guy. He made the movie he
Yeah.
wanted to make, and it's so particular, and some people, it's like very niche. But I'm glad that he got to make what he. But then, like when I saw the praise, I was like, well, hot damn, like. Because this is certainly not the popcorn horror movie, that you expect from fucking The Nun and Conjuring bullshit and fucking Crooked Man up your ass and all that bullshit.
Fuck the Nun.
But
Whoa,
good
we haven't
on it.
gotten
I'm
there
like,
yet.
Not just I'm glad. I'm glad that it's getting the praise.
We are
that
at
it's getting.
235. Do we want to do our honorable mentions and worst on a Patreon episode or what?
Hell no. Let's roll through this bitch.
All right, this is
We're
going to be a
going
3-hour
3
episode.
hours. We're going
At
till the
least.
end of the year.
At
It's
least.
It's end of 2018.
My girlfriend's
You're
not
sticking
stoked
around.
about it, but we're doing it.
You're
So,
invested.
If you gotta go, then that's a different story.
No, it's
but
fine.
If you don't gotta go,
It's not
It's
like you can't
fine.
pause this shit. Play it tomorrow.
go home. Go home. You're drunk. All right. Let's,
Go to Korea.
Rob is encouraging me to drive inebriated.
no, I was talking
On
about
record.
flying to Korea. Let's talk about our bottom three. We
Bottom.
talked about bottom three.
Our
What about
bottom three.
Yeah. Randy, what's the first dog shit movie you want to talk about?
My number 3 on my top 3 list of horrible horror this year is Cloverfield Paradox. Fuck that movie. I don't think I need to even explain why, really.
Dude, what was the worst part of that movie? The fucking hand or whatever.
The hand didn't bother me so much as just everything else.
Let's go to the hand. Well, it had some cool shit where the chick like shut up and she was all like in the wall and pipes are going through her body. That fucking hand was some horse.
It's just like it's painfully obvious. This is the movie, like the bunker or whatever. Cloverfield, 10 Cloverfield Lane. That movie was a good movie, a good script that was portrayed by good actors that happened to have this Cloverfield stamped on it, and then like a final 10 minutes tacked onto it, and it suffered for those things. But this movie was a bad script with not so great performances.
Dude, I feel like if they had left some aspects out, it wouldn't have been so bad. But like certain things, like the tone, there was just no consistent tone.
No,
Like,
it was like Star Trek like bloopers. That's what this movie felt like, is Star Trek goddamn bloopers.
That was doo-doo, bro.
I can't even verbalize how much I disliked watching this movie, especially after it being the third movie in the Cloverfield oeuvre or whatever. Like, I don't want this to be the direction of. Like I said in the episode, I appreciate the effort to make Cloverfield sort of like a genre-defying, unifying film story, like central point. But goddamn, could you not find a better script? Like, do you have to just like scrape the bottom of the Bad Robot barrel and slap Cloverfield on the title in order to make it fucking like makeable, like workable? Just fuck Cloverfield Paradox. How about you, Juice? What's your number 3 on the worst? Or what's your
dude? I'm giving number 3 to fucking Winchester, man. What a turn of a movie.
That's my one. That's my one.
That's my number.
Oh wait, are we going? Oh wait.
I don't think
Either it doesn't matter. They're
This
all
section-
sad. They're all serious.
if somebody's made it to this point, they deserve to hear us just speak the truth.
Exactly.
That's my
yeah. Here's some shitty movies from this year. A turn of a movie that ends with the fucking ending of a movie is you shoot a ghost.
You shot a ghost. You shot him.
That's the
I
end.
forgot about
Spoiler. The ending
It's
of this
the
movie
Winchester house, so you gotta shoot the ghosts.
a ghost.
That sounds like the ending to a
Holy God.
like that's like a Knott's Berry Farm ride. Like that's not real in any capacity.
God, especially a movie about like a real place that exists that's like really intriguing and really interesting, and it has like cool, could have a really like aesthetically pleasing look and everything, and like could be this kind of like puzzle. I don't know. Fuck shooting a ghost, dude. What a turd of a
They
movie.
shat the bed.
What a turd of a fucking movie, January ass release movie this was.
January
Fuck
ass release. I'm making that shirt.
that. Yeah, dude.
I'm a January ass release. That's what it's gonna say.
Dude, January ass release, fucking Winchester bullshit gets number
Fuck
3.
the-
And really, I don't know. I don't think I spaced this out appropriately as far as 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
but
no.
it's still dumb.
They're all bad.
They're all bad.
My number 3 spot is a Netflix original that was also a January head-ass release. It's called Open House. This movie is dumb as fuck.
I've never seen that one.
Don't watch it. This like kid and his mom, they move into this new home it's being sold, so like they're just kind of living there. In the interim, people are like viewing it, and then this one guy views it, and it turns out that he like hides in the basement and he like taunts them and stuff. Nothing makes sense. Some people die. Nothing matters. It's awful. Don't watch it. Randy, what's your number 2 or whatever?
Oh, my number 2 is probably everyone else's number 1. It's The Nun.
Dude, fuck that movie.
Dude,
Let's-
I'm gonna
let's get
say
ready.
like
Fuck that
The Nun.
movie.
The Nun is my number 2, and that's I think that's in for people who actually listen to us, which I'm so sorry, but that I was pretty kind to that movie on our review. I think more than almost anybody else in the entire world, maybe. But
Yeah.
it's a terrible fucking movie, and like I feel like I gave it a lot more leeway than it deserved. Fucking The Nun. It takes like a scary. It's like if Terrifier was based on a short where Art the Clown showed up and did like 1 or 2 kills or something like that, and then they decide, okay, we'll make a movie out of this guy. It's the same sort of thing with The Nun, where it's like the look of the creature or the slasher was good enough to make a feature film around,
Yeah.
at least in terms of whoever was involved, whoever was like in charge of that character. The difference is like I don't love Terrifier. I really don't. It's in my dishonorable mentions, but this is for me. The Nun is like everything terrible about Terrifier compounded by 1,000. Like everything of like, oh, we take something really interesting looking and just make the dumbest, most baseline, most predictable bullshit movie of all time wrapped around it. It's a turd wrapped in a shit, encapsulated in diarrhea, frozen at flash frozen temperatures.
Oh,
It's
damn.
dog shit. Eat it at your own risk.
I love that review. I will say, like, yeah, fuck The Nun for sure. It is far from the worst movie I watched this year, in my opinion. The thing that like infuriates me the
Winchester.
most about it is it had so much potential, and they took everything that made the Nun character in The Conjuring 2 scary, and they started with it in the Nun movie, and then just said, nah, fuck all that, and just shat all over it, man. They just
really don't think
fucking
it had
ruined it.
that much potential. I mean, even when they
I
announced
agree.
we're gonna make a Nun movie, we were like, what? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like
Was
all
it-
of us were
was-
like, why?
was-
There-
not.
It didn't need to be
Conjuring
made.
2.
For
Conjuring
sure.
2 was the Nun movie. They fucking it was the final villain. It was it was the Andre Gruber of that movie. Do we need on Andre Gruber? Excuse me. Andre Gruber's a friend of mine. Shout out to Andre Gruber.
Work in post.
I'm trying to keep up with you.
fucking great.
He's
Somebody's
the Hans Gruber of this fucking movie. The Nun doesn't need to have a movie because it has a movie. Its movie is called The Conjuring 2. That's what
Anyway.
it's called.
Juice, what's your number 2?
Number 2, dude. God, to even call it horror doesn't feel fair, but I think it was in the discussion. The Meg.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
That movie sucks.
I never saw
dick.
that
Dude,
shit.
that movie is just a turd of a movie.
Sucks megalodon.
It's just a
dick.
turd. And I mentioned it in Pacific Rim, which wasn't a horror movie at the time. It's just something I had been watching. I'm gonna bring it up now, again. For the next several years, maybe many, you're gonna see movies that are specifically designed and created to do well enough through marketing in the United States, but are really appealing to Chinese markets, because that's the next hot shit. And every single motherfucking time, you're gonna see a goofy ass white motherfucker trying to speak Chinese terribly, and you're gonna see the Chinese characters look at each other like this. Because he's speaking it terribly.
Did that happen in the Meg?
Absolutely. So in Pacific
Rainn
I
Wilson
mentioned this specifically, like, oh, they're really starting to try to create these movies to appeal like the Chinese markets, whatever.
Sure.
In Pacific Rim, it was Charlie Day, and the Chinese character was like the hero, like, oh, she's trying to save the day, the actress, whatever. Same fucking bullshit in the Meg, where like it's split, like half Chinese, half American, whatever. Where the goofy ass white dude is fucking Dwight from The Office, who just can't fucking speak Chinese, can't speak Mandarin, shows up and tries to, and everybody's like,
Movie sucks.
and then fucking, it's just, you're gonna see that shit. It's gonna be some bullshit ass movies that are trying to appeal to like now the huge booming ass middle class Chinese market that just like doesn't have any kind of like real taste in cinema. Apparently, you go,
whoa,
this hockey ass white
weird,
motherfucker.
almost racist.
No. I mean,
Okay,
it's
Korea.
It's so odd. It's so obvious, like what it's designed to do. Like,
No, I agree with that much.
Chinese.
Yeah.
No, that's why do you think?
Charlie Day can't speak Chinese.
Why do we
like
think?
dumb movies too, though?
No.
Not so much.
That's not.
No, to build off of that, I also watched Jurassic Park: Fallen Kingdom recently, which had absolutely nothing to do with the Chinese, which was just as much dog shit as fucking the Meg. However, the Meg is dog shit. Rob pointed out originally the fact that a movie about a giant fucking shark is 2 hours long, and at an hour and 15, you're like, what is going on? Like, they repeat,
It's boring.
they take an hour and do something, they take the second hour and do the same thing. Literally, like the same god. It's fun. I can't even classify it necessarily as horror, honestly, except that it's got like a huge creature in it. But fuck that, man.
If you want to take a nap, put the Meg on.
The Meg is some dog shit.
Damn.
Boring as fuck.
700 Club isn't enough. Watch the Meg.
Fucking boring, man.
Yeah, that's fucking.
My number 2 spot, Winchester. Fuck that movie. Randy, what's your number 1?
Number one's Winchester.
Fuck that movie.
Fuck that movie, dude. Dude, honestly, here's the problem. I ranked Cloverfield 3, The Nun 2, Winchester 1. The difference between The Nun and the Winchester is at least The Nun kind of looks threatening.
Right.
Fucking
Yeah.
the Winchester house doesn't have even a visual pivot point. It just has shooting ghosts and just has fucking like terrible mystery that doesn't matter.
It does at the end in like the garden or whatever. There's like a bunch of ghosts that appear, but then if you recall, they do literally nothing.
Not a thing.
Not a single thing.
It's like Hill House except shitty. It's like that.
Yeah. Movie sucks.
Fuck
Anyway,
that movie, dude. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Juice, what's your number 1?
Number 1's The Nun. Fuck The
Yeah.
Nun, dude. Fuck the Nun. When it came out, it was like they're making it. I'm so opposed to everything about like the Crooked Man and the Nun and bullshit. And at least like you had an opportunity to prove me wrong. Shut me the fuck up. Nope. This is like pure. If you
What's
like
the name?
fucking money grab in the dictionary should just have the Nun. It's nothing. It's nothing.
What is the name of that
nun thing?
What is the name of that the character who's like local who delivers shit?
I don't even
No,
know.
Frenchie. Frenchie.
They call him
Fucking
Frenchie. They call him like
Frenchie.
the Mexican or some shit.
That fucking character is the that
Exactly.
character is the most infuriating thing in 2018.
20,000.
2018.
This movie is nothing. And it's such a shit stain on the horror genre that it pisses me off the most. At least the Meg, I'm like, well, maybe they try to spin that as like with Jason Statham, like, oh, it's an action kind of whatever.
Well, at least it's not building off of a successful franchise.
Yeah, The Nun is such a shit. This was purely advertised as a horror. It spins off a successful horror franchise, and it's nothing.
Yeah.
There.
None.
To describe it as a movie, it's like, what is the plot? It's nothing. Like, it's bullshit. It's like somebody literally took 2 hours.
The Nun
off their
is
shitty lunch break to wipe some fucking mayonnaise off their fingers to write this shit like that.
Honestly,
damn!
It
The
had,
mayonnaise
it did
quote
have
really
some
got
cool scares.
No, what?
I think it
No,
did.
No, I don't think that it's like irredeemable in terms of a few moments. There are a few moments that are not
did.
terrible.
I'm on board. Like fuck this movie for sure.
No, we're all
It had
agreed.
some cool moments.
I hate. I guess the biggest thing, I hate the impact that it has, like, on the horror genre. Like, this is like people go into it and it being successful enough that they think, let's make a Nun 2.
It's
Fuck
like,
that.
it's like a total panty waste of a movie.
It is.
It's like you
The
go
fact
in
that
and
there's
you're
a
like,
Nun
oh,
2
it's
is-
Conjuring whatever universe
Yeah.
blur.
Oh, see, we
Enough
spin
people
it
see
in
it,
at the
so,
end.
so you know you're gonna get another like safe
It's
panty
terrible.
waste movie.
That dude just ends up like in a coffin, and like it's not.
I feel
doesn't make
pretty
any sense.
I
confident.
don't like that scene.
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't
It
make
doesn't.
any sense. It
It
doesn't.
You're right. It doesn't. I'm sorry.
It's a terrible film, and the fact that there's a sequel is genuinely a slap in the face of all human beings. But,
Yeah.
It's a fart in the pants of all.
Not only is it a slap in the face, but the fact that they're like shoving it down everybody's throats for Halloween. It's like, if you want that one thrill, this is the movie you're gonna see.
Wrong.
Go
Terrifying.
see Halloween.
See, that's-
I am advertising Halloween 2018 over this movie. That's how bad it is.
well, yeah, you're doing it in 2019 almost, so it's kind of not worth it.
Let me talk about my number one, and then we'll be
Do it.
good with
Number
with
one,
the
what is
shit-
it?
Shit movies, dude. My number one is Slender Man.
Oh, I never saw it.
Yeah, we never saw
Don't.
it, so I'm sure it's bad.
Slender Man, aka Slender Mang, is fucking dumb. This movie is like you're sitting in the theater. I went to the movie theater to watch this movie. I watched it. It was over, and I was like, somebody made half of a movie, and that's what I just watched. It's like you get like maybe halfway through a second act, and you're like, and then the movie ends, and like all the digital effects are like maybe halfway done. Like
Oh, come on.
I cannot do anything digitally on my computer. I could make effects that look better than the shit that's in this movie. It is fucking horrible, man.
I have
it's
to watch this movie.
Horrible.
Yeah, I kind of want to watch.
You just see there's like a dude that looks kind of tall in the woods, and then the screen shakes, and then that's like the scare. That's the fucking scare. This movie's terrible. Slender Man is like, I'm not like super big on like the creepypasta stuff, but there's like obviously a lot that you can pull from to make a cool movie about Slender Man. And
It's called fucking Channel Zero, bitch.
You're exactly right, and I'm starting to get into that, and I'm enjoying it for sure, way more than this fucking Slender Man movie. They just like, it's nothing. It's fucking nothing. Don't watch this movie.
Slender Man.
It's
I
terrible.
love the degree to which you hate this film. I've not
It's
watched
like irredeemable.
I want to watch it just to hate on it with you.
It's irredeemable. I'd rather watch The Meg, like 100-fold. I'd rather
Would you
watch The
recommend
Meg.
that I watch it just to commiserate with you? Would you warn me off?
Kind of, yeah, because I want to complain with you.
Okay, so you're a bad friend, or it's not as bad as you said.
Oh yeah, it'd be totally for me. If you watch this movie, it's totally for me. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
not for you.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Dude, Japan Man was a hot hashtag back in the day.
Japan. We are dumb. Do we have? I've got some honorable mentions. Do you guys have some stuff?
Yeah, I got some honorable mentions. I got one in particular, and I think we all got this fucking honorable mention. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we do. I know what you're talking about.
It's fucking Hill House.
It's Hill House.
It's better than any of the movies on my list.
So here's the thing. So on my honorable mentions specifically, I've got a lot of TV shows because I didn't want to include them in my top 10 because that's not fair.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I include it only because it's a TV show and not a film.
Yeah.
Since we were talking about the top 10 films, Hill House for me is the best horror of the year, rather.
Yeah,
it's the.
I wouldn't go that far, but it is fucking incredible.
It's good. It's good.
It's a must watch.
It is.
To me, like taken as a whole, it is the best horror of the year. I would put it above Mandy and Annihilation and Hereditary in terms of.
Wow.
I would. That's what I'm saying.
I love it.
Like this is it's only an honorable mention, like I said, because it's a TV show, and all that said, it's unfair to even compare them because this show had what was it like 11 hours more?
10 episodes, roughly an hour piece, roughly 10
hours. it had 8 hours at least more to establish characters and do all the things that you want a film to do for your characters. And it didn't have to be as economical. So that's where it falls apart in terms of comparison. But everything else, I think like the end result, I am far more like engaged, intrigued, and interested in Hill House than I am in any of these movies. And that's saying something because I love Mandy. I fucking love it. Annihilation was so great that I read a book. I don't read books.
You made me read.
They made me fucking read a book. Like Hereditary was so fucking good I confused it with my favorite movie of the horror genre almost. Like fucking Suspiria was fucking great. Like there's a lot of great shit. There's a lot of great shit that I topped over because of this, that I would top over because of the show in terms of things produced in this year. And I don't know. I don't know what I can say about Hill House that hasn't already been said. We covered it in an episode, and I don't think there's any reason to rehash it except to just say I fucking love it. And I don't know. I'm pretty confident that whatever comes out next, I'm not going to be as interested in. Yeah. That's my guess.
Probably not. Yeah.
Hill House season 2 is a bad idea to me. But if they surprise me, I would not be that surprised because they surprised me the first time around. So, you know,
if they do a season 2, which I'm sure they will, I just hope Flanagan directs again. That's what I hope.
Man, me too. Yeah. It's as good as it gets for horror in 2018 in terms of what I think. So I'm not gonna push it beyond that. I will say that other honorable mentions of mine include Searching and The Endless, but I know you guys hate The Endless, so we can talk if you want. But
The Endless for me, it's not on my dishonorable mentions or whatever, but it's like that was the movie. It's one of the movies I like highly anticipated this year. Exactly, biggest disappointments because Spring, which was the combo of directors Benson and Moorhead, like writer directors. The movie they made before The Endless was a movie called Spring, and I fucking love Spring. It's incredible, and The Endless came out. And it just was like such a wet fart to me. Like I wanted to love it. I wanted to love it so hard. I was so ready to love it.
I literally had the opposite. I had the opposite situation going into it because you guys hated on it so bad, and I didn't watch the movie until after you guys had reviewed it. I knew you hated it. That I watched it and I was like, okay, this is gonna be a terrible movie, and I had the complete opposite reaction to it, where I was like, oh my god, this is like, there's some interesting ideas in this movie,
and there are, yeah,
and like, I'm not saying obviously I didn't include it in any sort of list, but I would say that it's probably at best a middle range movie for 2018 for me.
Yeah.
But it's not bad to me. Like, I was not disappointed. So I think that's kind of the key difference.
Yeah.
The thing is, going in, I didn't have any kind of expectations for the film. Once it was revealed that it was tied into another movie that I had seen like several years before,
Resolution.
I had to like really think about like, oh yeah, what was that movie? Like, so going in, it wasn't like I was like, yes, this is finally the sequel to Resolution I've really been gunning for. I was just like, okay, I literally, it was just a name, The Endless, and I was like, once it like revealed like it's, I was like, fuck this movie. God, it was
Not great.
nah.
Justin, do you have any honorable mentions you'd like to discuss?
I do. Upgrade, obviously, it made both of y'all. I'm actually kind of surprised it made both of y'all's top 10 list. I liked Upgrade. I just can completely understand and see how in just like a year or two, I'll be like, wait, what was Upgrade about? Like, like it will easily escape me. So while I enjoyed it in the theaters, I don't feel like it'll have any kind of long lasting effect. It'll be easily forgotten. And it wasn't even treading any kind of new territory. I mean, same shit that fucking Will Smith did with, what was that, like iRobot and so it's not,
Yeah.
but they did it well. I feel like the acting could have been improved, or some of the dialogue that they wrote, or just the characterization of that main guy. I didn't like how they handled that all around, but I thought it was a good movie. I enjoyed watching it. Also, Apostle on Netflix, I mentioned it in what we've been watching. I thought that was definitely worth a watch. It's not, it didn't end up making my top 10. It's the same kind of thing. I feel like in a couple years I'll forget all details of this movie and be like, yes, I've seen that movie, but not really be able to recall what it's about. And same kind of thing. It had some cool kills, some cool ideas behind it, but ultimately forgettable.
Yeah.
But it's and it's entertaining. And
Yeah.
it got some good characters and some good cooters, of course. Apostle's got a solid cooter. If you're on the cooter hunt and you're really trying to lock it down, hit up Apostle, and I think you'll be able to spot him pretty good.
Cooter. Cool. I've got like 5 honorable mentions. I'll try and blast through them real quick. One was The Haunting of Hill House. I don't need to talk about it anymore. A movie came out this year called Thoroughbreds. It's by far one of my favorite movies of the year. It probably could have taken my number 1 spot on my list. I can't actually call it a horror movie though. It's very much a character study about like a sociopath, and there's like some light murder going on. I don't know that I can call it a horror movie though. It's very
Light murder.
It's very akin to Heathers, which I've never seen. I've just heard people refer to it as being very similar to Heathers. It's Anton Yelchin's last movie. It's got Anya Taylor-Joy in it. It's just like such a great character study. I fucking love this movie.
Is that the one where like the chick is rich and she wants to kill her parents or whatever?
Yeah, they're both well off. They're in
Yeah.
high school. One of them's like a sociopath. The other one has a stepfather that she hates, wants to kill him, and then they plot to have him killed by Anton Yelchin's character in the movie. It's wildly fantastic. Like, I can't recommend this movie enough. It's like horror adjacent. I fucking love it. Watch Thoroughbreds.
Cool. I actually just took a note to like watch Thoroughbreds.
It's so good. The rest of the stuff I have is like horror television because I couldn't put it in like my top 10. Dark Tourist season 1 on Netflix is by far one of my favorite things I've seen of this year. It's fucking fantastic. It's
Tickle.
It's akin to like no, not a fan.
I thought I found the main guy, Dark Tourism, right?
Dark Tourist, yeah.
Yeah, I found them to be too goofy for my liking.
He's just like a guy. I don't know. Regardless, like this guy goes to like different cities across the world, and he takes you to places that are maybe. I mean, they're interesting to people who are drawn to dark things, but they're not like tourist destinations. So there's like something kind of intriguing in a dark potentially fucked up way, and he explains it to you. It's like the best way I can describe it is like if you're familiar with